How could you do this to us? After everything we've been through.
It was for the family. You wouldn't understand.
Wouldn't as det stand you wide might no, face you drees thanks for their roars.
I was protecting you. Some truths are too heavy.
The moment my daughter-in-law looked at my faded army jacket, she laughed loud enough for the entire neighborhood to hear. "A broke old soldier," Lauren sneered. "You really couldn't find anything less embarrassing to wear." My own son lowered his eyes and said nothing. I simply tightened my grip on my old duffel bag. Then 3 black SUVs rolled into the driveway. Uniformed officers stepped out in perfect formation before one senior officer scanned the crowd and asked, "Is General Madison Turner here?" The color drained from Lauren's face, and I knew her world was about to change. If this story touches you in any way, I'd love to know where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. Please leave a comment below. And if you've ever been judged by your appearance instead of your character, tell me your story. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy heartfelt stories about family dignity and finding justice when no one expects it. I had been retired for almost 6 years when I first understood that silence could be mistaken for weakness. Most people imagined retirement as a peaceful thing. They pictured rocking chairs, warm coffee family dinners, and quiet mornings with sunlight spilling across the kitchen floor. And yes, I had those moments. I had my little brick house on the east side of town, my front porch swing, my small garden of tomatoes and basil, and an old pickup truck that rattled every time I turned the key. But retirement also had a kind of loneliness no one warned me about. After wearing a uniform for more than 40 years after waking up before dawn, to lead people who depended on my voice, my judgment, and sometimes my courage, the sudden quiet felt almost unnatural. The phone rang less. The meeting stopped. No one knocked on my door at 0500 with urgent briefings. No young officer waited outside my office, hoping I would tell them whether they were making the right decision. There was only me, the soft ticking of the kitchen clock, and the memory of my husband James. James had been gone 8 years by then. Sometimes I still caught myself setting out 2 coffee mugs in the morning. Sometimes I still turned my head when I heard a truck outside, expecting him to walk through the door with that tired smile he wore after fixing something in the garage. He had been a high school history teacher, the kind of man who remembered every student's name and every widow's broken fence on the block. He used to tell me, "Madison rank is only borrowed. Character is what you keep." That sentence stayed with me longer than any medal ever did. Maybe that was why, after I retired, I did not move into some gated community. I did not buy a luxury car. I did not hang my awards across the living room wall for visitors to admire. I kept most of my military life tucked away in the study inside polished wooden boxes and old leather folders. The house looked plain from the outside because I liked it that way. It was the same house where Ethan had learned to ride a bike, where James had painted the porch blue every spring, where we had prayed together during deployments and celebrated every safe return with burnt pancakes and laughter. To me, that house was not property. It was proof that love had lived there. My son Ethan used to understand that. When he was little, he would sit cross-legged on the bedroom floor and watch me shine my boots. His eyes would follow every movement of the brush, serious and wide, as though he was studying sacred work. "Mom," he asked once, "are you the boss of everybody?" I laughed so hard I nearly dropped the polish. "No, baby," I told him. "A good leader never thinks like that." "Then what do you do?" I remember looking at his small face and trying to find words simple enough for a 7-year-old. "I help people be brave when they are scared." For years after that, every time he was frightened, before a school play, before a math test, before the first time he asked a girl to homecoming, he would say, "Help me be brave, Mom." And I always did. Ethan grew into a good man in many ways. He became a civil engineer, steady and intelligent, the kind of man who could look at a bridge and understand the invisible strength holding it together. He was gentle with people, careful with words, and loyal to those he loved. But gentleness without courage can become silence. And silence in a family can wound just as deeply as cruelty. When Ethan married Lauren, I tried very hard to welcome her. She was beautiful, polished, and ambitious. She came from a family that valued presentation. Her mother had taught her which fork to use at formal dinners and which neighborhoods mattered. She wore expensive perfume that lingered in a room long after she left it. She knew how to smile in photographs, how to praise someone while insulting them, and how to make a person feel small without ever raising her voice. At first, I told myself she was simply different from me. Different was not wrong, but there were little moments. The first Thanksgiving after their wedding, Lauren walked into my kitchen and looked around as if she had stepped into a museum exhibit. "Oh," she said, touching the edge of my worn wooden table. "You still have this." I smiled. "James built that table." Her eyebrows lifted. "Really? It looks handmade." "It is," she gave a tiny laugh. "That's sweet." The word sweet sounded like pity in her mouth. Another time when I drove my old pickup to their house for Sophie's birthday, Lauren stood in the driveway beside a row of shiny cars belonging to other parents and said, "Madison, you could have parked around the corner. The street is already crowded." The street had plenty of room. I knew what she meant. She meant my truck did not match the picture she wanted. I pretended not to notice because Sophie ran out the door in a purple dress and threw herself into my arms. "Grandma Maddie," she shouted. That child was the soft place in my life. Sophie had James's curious eyes and Ethan's thoughtful heart. She asked questions other children skipped over. "Grandma, why do you fold clothes like that? Army habit. Why do you always sit facing the door? Army habit. Why do you never brag?" That one made me pause. I had been helping her glue stars onto a school project. She was 8 then, with glitter on her cheeks and serious concern in her voice. "I don't know," I said. "Maybe because anything worth doing should matter even if nobody claps." She thought about that for a long time. Then she whispered, "Mommy likes when people clap." Children notice more than adults think. Sophie loved my stories, though I never told her the heavy ones. I told her about soldiers sharing chocolate in the rain, about a young private who learned to play harmonica, badly but proudly, about women who carried more courage in one tired smile than some people carried in their whole bodies. Lauren did not like those stories. Whenever Sophie asked me something about the Army, Lauren's face tightened. "Sweetheart," she would say, "Grandma's stories are from a long time ago. Let's talk about something current." Or, "Don't ask too many questions. Grandma gets tired." Or the one that cut deepest, "Military people exaggerate. It's part of the culture." I never corrected her. I had spent a lifetime learning when to speak and when to wait. In war rooms and command centers and places where one careless word could cost lives, patience had saved me more than pride ever could. So I waited. But Lauren mistook my patience for having nothing to say. Over the years, she began speaking about me as if I were a problem Ethan had inherited. It started with small comments. "Your mother really should downsize. That neighborhood is not improving. She can't manage that house forever." Then the comments grew sharper. "She has no financial sense. She is too proud to admit she needs help. People from her generation don't understand money." I heard these things because Lauren had a habit of talking as if older people lost their hearing along with their youth. One Sunday afternoon, I was in their kitchen, rinsing a bowl after lunch, when I heard Lauren in the hallway with Ethan. "Your mother is sitting on a house she doesn't need," she said. Ethan's voice was low. "Lauren, that's her home? It's an asset," Lauren snapped. "And frankly, it's selfish. We could use that money for a better school district, a larger house, something that actually helps this family." There was a pause. Then Ethan said, "She isn't broke." Lauren laughed short and cold. "Then why does she live like that?" I stood at the sink with soap bubbles on my hands, staring out the window at Sophie chasing a butterfly across the backyard. Why does she live like that? Because I had watched soldiers die wishing they could go home to any house at all. Because James had planted the oak tree in the front yard the year Ethan was born. Because I knew the difference between price and value. Because after decades of being saluted, briefed, honored, challenged, and obeyed, the only thing I wanted was to be loved without having to prove I deserved it. Ethan did not answer her. That silence settled into me like dust. I dried the bowl, placed it in the cabinet, and walked back into the dining room as if I had heard nothing. Lauren smiled brightly when she saw me. "Everything okay, Madison?" I looked at my son first. He would not meet my eyes. Then I looked back at her. "Everything is fine," I said. It was not fine. But I had survived worse than being underestimated at a family lunch. What I did not know then was that Lauren had already begun seeing my home not as a place filled with memory, but as money trapped behind old walls. And once someone like Lauren decided she deserved something, she did not wait for permission. The first time Lauren asked me directly about selling my house, she did it with a smile so polished it almost looked kind. It was a Saturday morning in late March. The dogwoods on my street had just begun to bloom, and I had spent most of the morning trimming the rose bushes James planted along the front walk. My knees ached when I stood, but I liked the ache. It reminded me I still belonged to my own body, my own yard, my own life. I had just carried a basket of clipped branches to the curb when Lauren's white SUV pulled up in front of my house. She did not call first. Lauren rarely did when she wanted something. She stepped out wearing cream-colored slacks, sunglasses too large for her face, and shoes that looked more appropriate for a hotel lobby than an old sidewalk with cracked edges. Ethan was not with her. Sophie was not either. That told me enough. Madison, she called, waving as if we were close friends meeting for brunch. I was in the area. I glanced down the quiet street. "That's so?" she smiled. "Well, not exactly. I wanted to talk to you about something practical." Practical. That was one of Lauren's favorite words whenever she planned to dress selfishness in respectable clothing. I wiped my hands on a gardening towel and invited her inside. She entered slowly, scanning the living room like an inspector. Her eyes moved over the old piano, the framed family photos, the quilt folded across the back of the sofa, and James's worn leather chair near the window, the chair where he used to read history books with a pencil tucked behind one ear. Lauren's gaze rested on it for half a second before moving away. "You keep everything exactly the same," she said. "I like it that way." She gave a soft laugh. "I know, but sometimes change is healthy." I went to the kitchen and poured iced tea into 2 glasses. She did not touch hers when I set it down. "Ethan and I have been thinking," she began. That was when I knew Ethan had not been thinking. Lauren had been thinking, and Ethan had been standing nearby while she did it. "About what?" She folded her hands on the table. "Your house." I stayed quiet. "You know this place has value now," she said. "The whole area is changing. Developers are buying older homes, renovating them, turning them into something useful." "Useful," I repeated. Lauren missed the warning in my voice. Or maybe she heard it and ignored it. "You're here alone," she continued. "The maintenance, the taxes, the neighborhood. It's a lot for someone your age. Someone your age." I had commanded operations in hostile regions with less caution than Lauren used to discuss my life. I manage fine. But for how long, she asked, tilting her head. "Madison, I'm not trying to offend you. I'm thinking about the future. My future or yours." Her smile tightened. "Our family's future?" There it was. I looked around the kitchen at the curtains James had hated, but never asked me to replace because he knew I liked them. At the small dent in the wooden floor where Ethan once dropped a baseball trophy. At the corner cabinet where Sophie's drawings were held by magnets, shaped like fruit. "This house is not for sale," I said. Lauren leaned back as if I had slapped her. "You haven't even heard the full idea." I heard enough. She inhaled through her nose, then tried again with a softer tone. "You could move into a senior community? A nice one? Safe? Clean? Social? You wouldn't have to worry about repairs." "I'm not worried." And Ethan wouldn't have to worry either. That one hurt because she knew exactly where to press. I have never asked Ethan to carry this house. No, Lauren said. You just make him feel guilty about it. My fingers rested on the table. I did not move them. In the Army, I had learned that the body often speaks before the mouth does. So I kept my body still. Lauren, I said quietly. James and I bought this house when Ethan was 3. Every birthday, every deployment return, every Christmas morning, every hard conversation that made us stronger happened here. I am not selling it because you believe memory has no market value. Her cheeks flushed. That's unfair. So is assuming I'm too old to know what matters to me. For a moment, I thought she might apologize. Instead, she stood and picked up her handbag. I just hope pride doesn't become a burden. I walked her to the door. She paused on the porch and looked back at the house. You know, places like this look sentimental until something goes wrong. Then suddenly, everyone expects the adult children to clean up the mess. I smiled faintly. Then I suppose it's a blessing. I've spent my life cleaning up my own. She left without another word. For a few days, I hoped that would be the end of it. It was not. Lauren changed tactics. She stopped asking me and started speaking around me. At church, Mrs. Henderson touched my arm after service and said, Madison, honey, if you ever need help, you know people care about you. I thanked her, confused. At the grocery store, a cousin of James's asked whether I was doing all right financially. At Sophie's school recital, one of Lauren's friends looked at me with pity and said, It must be so hard to keep up a house alone. The rumors spread quietly at first, like water finding cracks in a wall. Madison was struggling. Madison could not afford repairs. Madison was too proud to ask for help. Madison should really let Ethan and Lauren step in. None of it was true, but lies do not need truth to travel. They only need someone willing to repeat them. I could have stopped it. One phone call to the right people. One public explanation of my retirement, my pension, my investments, my military honors, and the rumors would have collapsed under their own foolishness. But I had learned long ago that defending your dignity to people determined to misunderstand you can become another kind of humiliation. So I let them talk. Not because I was weak, because I was watching. Every Tuesday morning, I volunteered at the Veterans Center near the county courthouse. I helped older veterans fill out forms, listened to widows who did not know which benefits they were entitled to, and sat with young soldiers who came home carrying invisible weight in their eyes. No one there called me broke. No one there called me useless. They called me ma'am or general if they had known me before retirement, though I usually asked them not to. Respect felt heavier when you did not need it. One afternoon, while I was helping a Vietnam veteran named Mr. Alvarez organize medical paperwork, my phone buzzed. It was Sophie. Grandma, are you okay? I stepped into the hallway and called her. Her voice was small. Mom said people are worried about you. I'm all right, sweetheart. She said your house is too much, and that maybe you don't understand money. I closed my eyes. Children should never be made to carry adult manipulation. Sophie. I said gently, sometimes people think simple means poor. Sometimes they think quiet means confused. But a person can live simply because they choose peace. Are you poor? The question came out scared. No, baby. Then why does Mom say that? I looked through the glass doors at the veterans waiting in the lobby, men and women who had given pieces of themselves to a country that did not always remember them kindly. Because your mother is afraid of things she cannot measure, I said. Sophie was silent for a moment. Like what character? Loyalty? Memory? Love? She whispered, I don't think those are small. No, I said. They are not. That evening, Ethan called. I knew from his voice that Lauren had been standing near him before he stepped away. Mom, he said, Lauren told me you were upset. I'm not upset. She said you took the conversation about the house the wrong way. I almost laughed. The wrong way? She says she was trying to help. Ethan, did you ask her to come here? Silence. There it was again. My son's most familiar answer. No, he finally admitted. Did you know she was telling people I'm struggling financially? He sighed. I think she's just concerned. Concern does not require an audience. He had no response. I sat in James's chair, the phone pressed to my ear, and felt something inside me shift. Not break, not yet, just shift. Ethan, I said I raised you to stand upright, even when it was uncomfortable. I know, Mom. Do you? His breathing changed. I don't want conflict. No one does. But avoiding conflict with someone who is wrong often creates conflict with someone who did nothing to deserve it. He was quiet for a long time. I'm sorry, he said finally. I believed he meant it. I also knew sorry was not the same as courage. A week later, I found out Lauren had contacted a realtor. Not from Ethan, not from Lauren. From a young woman named Denise, who knocked on my door wearing a navy blazer and carrying a folder with glossy neighborhood comparisons. Mrs. Turner, she asked brightly. I'm Denise Palmer from Greenline Realty. I had a conversation with your daughter-in-law and wanted to see when you might be ready for a valuation walkthrough. I looked at the folder, then at her face. My daughter-in-law does not own this house. Denise's smile faltered. Oh, I'm sorry. She gave me the impression the family was preparing to make decisions together. The family is not. Her cheeks reddened. I apologize. I should have confirmed directly. Yes, I said, you should have. After she left, I stood on the porch for a long time. The wind moved through the oak tree James had planted. Its branches had grown wide and strong over the decades, shading the roof, sheltering birds, dropping leaves every fall that I still raked myself, because I liked the ritual of it. Lauren had crossed a line. She had not merely judged me. She had begun planning around me, and that was a very different thing. Inside the house, the afternoon light fell across the hallway wall, where photographs of Ethan, James, Sophie, and me hung in mismatched frames. In one photo, Ethan was missing his 2 front teeth. In another, James stood behind me in my dress uniform, his hands on my shoulders, his smile proud but quiet. I touched the edge of that frame. Don't worry, I whispered. I did not say whether I was speaking to James or to myself, but that night, I unlocked the study closet. For the first time in years, I opened the cedar chest at the bottom. Inside were the parts of my life Lauren had never cared to ask about. Medals, letters, official citations, photographs of me standing beside presidents, generals, ambassadors, and soldiers whose names I still remembered, and beneath them all a sealed folder from the Department of Defense. I did not open it yet. I simply rested my hand on top of it. Lauren thought she was moving pieces on a board. What she did not understand was that I had spent a lifetime reading battlefields before anyone else even knew they were standing on one. Lauren's dinner party invitation arrived as a text message, which told me immediately it was not really an invitation. It was a command wrapped in politeness. Family dinner Saturday. Some colleagues and neighbors coming. Please dress nicely. 6 p.m. sharp. Please dress nicely. I stared at those 3 words longer than I should have. At 68 years old, after 4 decades of service, after bearing a husband, raising a son, commanding soldiers, comforting widows, and sitting beside wounded young men who were afraid to sleep with the lights off. My daughter-in-law still believed I needed instructions on how to appear in public. I almost declined. Then Sophie called. Grandma, are you coming Saturday? Her hope made the decision for me. I'll be there, sweetheart. Can you sit next to me if your mother allows it? She said there's a seating plan. Of course there was. Saturday evening, I put on a navy dress James had always liked. It was simple with sleeves to the elbow and a modest neckline. I pinned a small pearl brooch near my shoulder, slipped into polished black flats, and wrapped a gray shawl around my arms. Before leaving, I paused beside the mirror in the hall. My hair silver and cropped close framed a face that had weathered more than most people in Lauren's dining room would ever imagine. There were lines near my eyes, deeper ones around my mouth, and a small scar at my left temple from an accident during a convoy inspection years earlier. I did not look rich. I did not look fragile either. I looked like a woman who had survived herself into peace. When I arrived at Ethan and Lauren's house, the driveway was full. Luxury sedans lined the curb. Through the tall front windows, I could see warm light flowers glassware and people moving with practiced elegance. Lauren opened the door before I knocked twice. Her eyes swept over me. The navy dress, the shawl, the flats, the old leather handbag. Her smile appeared. Not warm? Approved. "Madison," she said, "you made it." That was the plan. She leaned in and kissed the air beside my cheek. "We're trying to keep things upbeat tonight. Ethan's firm partners are here and a few people from the gala committee. Just relax and enjoy yourself." That meant, "Do not embarrass me." "I usually do," I said. Inside, Ethan stood near the fireplace speaking with two men in suits. When he saw me, relief crossed his face, followed quickly by guilt. He came over and hugged me. "Mom, you look nice." "Thank you." His voice dropped. "Lauren's been stressed, I can tell." He winced, but before he could say more, Lauren clapped her hands lightly. "Everyone, dinner is ready." The dining room looked like a magazine photograph. White flowers in crystal vases, gold-rimmed plates, candles, folded linen napkins, place cards in Lauren's careful handwriting. I found mine near the far end of the table beside a potted plant, and across from a man who spent the first 10 minutes of dinner checking his phone beneath the tablecloth. Sophie was seated near the middle between Ethan and one of Lauren's friends. When she saw where I sat, her smile faded. "Mom." Sophie said Grandma is too far away. Lauren laughed gently. "Sweetheart, grown-up dinners have seating arrangements, but she's family." The table went quiet for half a second. Lauren's expression sharpened, and family helps by being flexible. I gave Sophie a small nod. "It's all right." But it was not all right. Dinner began with polite conversation. Ethan's firm had recently completed a major highway project. One of the neighbors owned several rental properties. Another guest was involved with the city's Military Heritage Recognition Gala, which Lauren mentioned often enough that I understood why I had been invited. She wanted witnesses. She wanted a stage. "Lauren tells us your mother served one man," said to Ethan midway through the salad course. Before Ethan could answer, Lauren smiled and lifted her wine glass. "Oh, Madison had a career in the Army years ago. Very dedicated. Very humble life afterward." The way she said humble made it sound like unsuccessful. The man turned toward me. "What branch?" "Mrs. Turner Army," I said. "And what did you do?" Lauren cut in again, laughing softly. "Oh, I'm sure it was mostly administrative by the end. You know how government jobs can be. Stable, but not exactly glamorous." A few people chuckled. Ethan looked down at his plate. I felt Sophie's eyes on me. The old Madison Turner, the one who had faced down rooms full of officers twice my size and half my patience, could have ended Lauren's little performance in 10 seconds. I could have named commands, operations, awards. I could have mentioned the places my boots had touched and the decisions my signature had carried. Instead, I picked up my water glass and took a slow sip. Lauren smiled wider, encouraged by my silence. "It's sweet, really," she continued. "Madison is from that generation that believes service alone is enough. But times change. You need financial planning, investments, assets. Otherwise, you end up with a lot of stories and not much else." The words landed lightly for everyone else. For me, they landed on bone. A woman beside Lauren gave an awkward little laugh. "Well, stories are important too." "Of course," Lauren said quickly. "But stories don't pay property taxes." Ethan's fork stopped moving. Sophie's face turned red. I looked at my son. "Please," I thought. "Just once." He opened his mouth. Then Lauren placed a hand on his wrist beneath the table, and he closed it. That was the moment I felt something colder than embarrassment. Disappointment. Not the hot kind that burns and fades. The deep kind. The kind that settles. The kind that says, I raised you better than this. The man across from me finally put his phone away and said, Mrs. Turner, did you enjoy your service? I turned to him. Yes, I said. And no. That drew a few curious looks. I continued. Service is not something you enjoy the way people enjoy vacations. It asks things from you. Time. Comfort. Sometimes sleep. Sometimes parts of your heart you do not get back. But if you are called to it, and if you serve with honor, then yes, it gives your life meaning. The table quieted. For a brief moment, the room felt honest. Then Lauren laughed. Well, that was very poetic. The honesty vanished. She turned to the guests and said, Madison has always had a flair for dramatic language. I suppose that's what happens when you spend too many years around military speeches. This time, no one laughed comfortably. Even strangers can sense cruelty when it becomes too naked. Sophie pushed back her chair. I don't like how you're talking to Grandma. Lauren's head snapped toward her. Sophie, she didn't do anything. Sophie, sit down. She helps people. Sophie said, her voice trembling. She helps veterans every week. She listens to them. She remembers their names. You act like she's nothing because she doesn't buy expensive stuff. My heart tightened. Sophie, I said softly. But she was crying now. She's not embarrassing. You are. The whole table froze. Lauren's face went pale with fury. Ethan finally stood. Sophie, go upstairs. But Dad. Now, his voice was not harsh, but it was weak. He was not defending me. He was managing the scene. Sophie ran upstairs, and her bedroom door closed hard enough to make the candle flames tremble. Lauren turned back to the table with a brittle smile. I'm so sorry. Preteen emotions. She's 11, I said. Lauren looked at me. I set my napkin beside my plate and stood. Thank you for dinner. Ethan rose halfway. Mom, wait. But I had already picked up my handbag. Lauren followed me into the foyer. You didn't have to make that uncomfortable, she whispered. I turned slowly. I made it uncomfortable. You know what I mean. You encouraged Sophie to disrespect me. No, Lauren. You disrespected me in front of her, and she had the courage to name it. Her jaw tightened. You know this is exactly what I mean. You act humble, but you enjoy being the victim. I studied her face. Beautiful, controlled, afraid. That last part surprised me. Lauren was afraid. Not of me physically. Not of my words. She was afraid of being exposed as less than the image she had built. I have never enjoyed being hurt, I said, but I have learned not to beg people to see my worth. She crossed her arms. Then maybe stop acting like the world owes you respect because you wore a uniform. I stepped closer just enough that she noticed. The uniform never made me worthy of respect. My choices did. Her eyes flickered. For one heartbeat, I thought she understood. Then the front door opened behind us. Sophie stood on the stairs in pajamas, tears on her cheeks. Grandma, don't go. I walked back and held her for a long moment. I love you, I whispered. I love you too. Remember what I told you? Kindness is not weakness. She nodded against my shoulder. When I left, Ethan walked me to the car. The night air was cool. Crickets chirped in the hedges. Through the dining room window, I could see Lauren smiling again for her guests, pretending everything was normal. Mom, Ethan said. I'm sorry. I put my hand on the car door. You say that often. He looked wounded. I did not soften it. I don't know what to do, he admitted. Yes, you do, I said. You just do not want to pay the cost. He looked back at the house. She's my wife. And I am your mother. His eyes filled with tears he would not let fall. I love you, he said. I believe you. Then why does it feel like that isn't enough? Because love without action becomes a hiding place. I did not say that. Instead, I touched his cheek the way I had when he was a boy. One day, Ethan Sophie will remember who stood up and who stayed seated. Children always do. He closed his eyes. I drove home through quiet streets, the pearls at my shoulder catching the passing lights. When I reached my house, I sat in the truck for a long time before going inside. I was not thinking about Lauren's jokes. I was thinking about Ethan's silence. Inside the house greeted me with its familiar stillness. I hung my shawl by the door, removed my shoes, and walked to the study. The cedar chest waited in the closet. I did not open it that night, but I did take one thing from the desk drawer. A formal cream envelope I had received earlier that week. The Department of Defense seal gleamed faintly beneath the lamp. I ran my thumb across my name. General Madison Elaine Turner, U.S. Army, retired. For the first time in years, I wondered whether silence had taught my family the wrong lesson. Maybe it was time they learned another one. The envelope had arrived by certified courier on a rainy Wednesday afternoon. I remembered the rain because it had tapped against the porch roof in a steady rhythm, the same way it used to drum on canvas tents during field exercises. I had been making chicken soup stirring celery and onions into a pot when a young man in a dark jacket knocked on my door. "Madison Turner?" he asked. Yes. He checked his tablet, then looked at me again with a different expression. More careful, more respectful. "I need your signature, ma'am." He handed me a thick cream envelope, protected inside a plastic sleeve. The return address carried no decorative flourish, no flashy logo, just official lettering and a seal I had known for most of my adult life. Department of Defense. For a moment, I simply held it. Some envelopes carry paper. Others carry the past. I signed, thanked him, and watched him hurry back through the rain. Then I closed the door and stood in the hallway with the soup beginning to simmer behind me. I had not expected it so soon. General William Carter had warned me a month earlier that something was being organized. He called me from Washington, though he was retired too, and claimed he no longer spent much time there. I did not believe him. Men like William Carter never fully retired. They simply stopped receiving a government paycheck and kept advising everyone anyway. "Madison," he had said in that steady baritone of his, "the council voted unanimously." For what? For you to stop pretending nobody remembers what you did. I sighed into the phone. "William." "Don't William me. You have dodged 3 recognition events, 2 oral history interviews, and 1 museum committee. I've been busy. You volunteer at a veterans center and grow tomatoes." "That is busy." He laughed. "The Military Heritage Recognition Gala is next month. Mayor Collins is hosting. The Army leadership will be represented. The Retired General Officers Council will be there. And before you argue, this is not optional. Everything is optional when you are retired." Not this. There had been warmth in his voice, but also command, old habits. I had leaned against the kitchen counter and looked at James's photograph on the wall. What exactly are they planning? A lifetime leadership honor? No. Yes, William. There are others more deserving. There are always others deserving. That does not make you undeserving. I had no answer for that. He softened. "Madison, you spent your whole career making room for other people to stand tall. Let someone stand for you this once." After we ended the call, I sat quietly for a long time. Honor is a strange thing when you have lived long enough to know its cost. People see the medals, the polished shoes, the standing ovation. They do not see the phone calls made in the dark. They do not see the names carried silently for decades. They do not see the birthdays missed, the fears swallowed, the prayers whispered before decisions that could not be undone. James used to attend ceremonies with me whenever he could. He would sit in the audience with his hands folded, proud but never boastful. Afterward, when people praised me, he would squeeze my hand and whisper, "Remember, Maddie, let them honor the work, not the ego." I wished he were there to tell me whether accepting this gala invitation was humility or pride. But James was gone, and lately, my family had begun confusing humility with emptiness. So, when the envelope arrived, I opened it. Inside was a formal invitation, printed on heavy cardstock. The annual Military Heritage Recognition Gala, hosted by Mayor Richard Collins, with special recognition presented to General Madison Turner, U.S. Army, retired for a lifetime of distinguished leadership service and humanitarian command. I read that line 3 times, not because I doubted it, because I felt the weight of every person hidden inside those words. Distinguished leadership meant young soldiers whose parents trusted me to bring them home. Service meant nights I slept in a chair beside a radio, waiting for updates. Humanitarian command meant children carried out of flood zones, families pulled from rubble medicine delivered where politics had failed mercy. I placed the invitation on the kitchen table and sat across from it. The soup boiled over. I did not move until the smell reached me. Later, I dried the invitation carefully and stored it in the drawer of my writing desk. I told no one. Not Ethan, not Lauren, not even Sophie, though. I wanted to see her face when she read it. The following week, Mayor Collins's announcement appeared in the local paper. I saw it at the grocery store while reaching for a carton of eggs. His photograph was on the front of the community section, his smile wide beneath the headline about honoring veterans and civic leaders. At Ethan's house that Sunday, Lauren could talk about nothing else. "This gala is going to be one of the most important events of the year," she said, arranging slices of lemon in a glass pitcher as if she were hosting a television segment. Richard Collins will be there, obviously. Several donors, people from the university, business owners, maybe even national press if the military sends someone important. Someone important. I buttered a roll and said nothing. Ethan glanced at me. He knew that look in my eyes. He had seen it when he was younger and had said something foolish enough to regret later. Lauren continued, "I spoke with the planning committee. They need refined local families to help host guests. I volunteered us." "Us?" Ethan asked. "Yes, us. It's good networking for you. And frankly, Sophie should be exposed to elevated environments." Sophie looked up from her plate. "Will Grandma come?" Lauren's hand paused. "Oh, sweetheart, I don't know if Grandma would enjoy something so formal." "I like Grandma formal," Sophie said. I smiled into my water glass. Lauren's eyes flicked toward me. "It's not about liking it. These events have protocols, attire, expectations, social standards." "Grandma knows protocols," Sophie said. I nearly choked. Ethan coughed into his napkin. Lauren frowned. "Military protocol from decades ago is not the same as a civic gala." "No," I said gently. "Usually military protocol is stricter." The room went still for half a breath. Then Lauren laughed as if I had made a joke. "Well, maybe. But this is really more about visibility and community influence." That was Lauren's religion. Visibility, influence, being seen by the right people in the right clothes, near the right flowers. She spent the next 2 weeks preparing as though the gala were a coronation. She ordered a new evening gown in deep emerald green. She hired someone to style her hair. She had Ethan fitted for a tuxedo. She bought Sophie a pale blue dress with a satin ribbon, then complained that Sophie wanted to wear the small silver bracelet I had given her, instead of the gold one Lauren preferred. "She has to learn presentation," Lauren said, during one of her uninvited visits to my house. I was making tea when she walked in carrying garment bags in irritation. "Sophie is 11. "Exactly. It starts young." What starts young? Understanding how people see you. I poured hot water over mint leaves. "And who taught you that being seen matters more than being known?" Her mouth tightened. "That sounds judgmental." It was a question. A loaded one. Most worthwhile questions are. She looked away first. The invitation was in my desk drawer, then only 20 feet from where Lauren stood in my kitchen complaining about satin ribbons and networking opportunities. I wondered what she would do if I opened the drawer and handed it to her. Would she apologize? Would she laugh? Would she accuse me of hiding it to embarrass her? I decided I was not ready to find out. A few days later, I received another call from William Carter. Madison, have you confirmed your attendance? I have not declined. That is not the same thing. I'm thinking? You think too much. That is why people survived under my command. He chuckled. Fair point. I sat on the porch swing watching evening light settle on James's oak tree. William, I said my family doesn't know. Doesn't know what the full extent. There was a pause. Your son doesn't know. He knows I served. He knows some pieces, but not enough. No. And your daughter-in-law, she thinks I am a broke old soldier with a sentimental attachment to outdated things. Silence stretched across the line. Then William said very quietly, Who said that to you? I should have lied. Instead, I said, It does not matter. It matters to me. That is kind of you. No, that is command loyalty. I closed my eyes. Command loyalty. I had not heard those words spoken that way in years. He continued, Madison, I won't interfere in your family, but I will say this. You are not obligated to shrink, so others can feel tall. The porch blurred for a moment. I know. Do you? That question followed me long after the call ended. The next afternoon, I came home from the Veterans Center to find Lauren in my kitchen. She had a key for emergencies. Apparently, she considered curiosity an emergency. She stood near the trash can with papers in her hand, sorting through mail she had no right to touch. When she saw me, she startled. Oh, Madison. I was just dropping off Sophie's permission slip. Your side door was unlocked. It had not been. My eyes moved to the counter. Bills, grocery circulars, a Veterans Center newsletter, and the corner of a cream envelope sticking out from beneath Lauren's handbag. She noticed me noticing. Oh, this? She pulled it free and gave a dismissive little laugh. Some formal-looking government thing. I assumed it was pension paperwork or a donation request. My hand stayed steady on my purse strap. Did you read it? No. I mean, not really. Her gaze shifted. You get so much military mail. I figured if it was important you'd know. She moved toward the trash. I knew what she was about to do before she did it. Lauren. She dropped the envelope into the bin. It looked like clutter. For a moment, all I heard was the rain from the day it arrived. The courier's respectful voice. William's words. James's memory. The names behind the honor. Clutter. Lauren brushed her hands together. There. One less thing for you to worry about. She smiled. And I smiled back. Not because it was funny, because in that instant, I understood something with complete clarity. Lauren was not merely ignorant. She was careless with anything she did not value, including me. Thank you for stopping by, I said. She blinked, perhaps disappointed I had not reacted. Of course, eh? After she left, I waited until her SUV turned the corner. Then I walked to the trash can. The envelope was gone. So was the invitation. For one sharp second, panic rose in me. Then I heard a small voice from the hallway. Grandma Sophie stepped out from the guest bathroom holding the cream envelope against her chest. I got it before she pushed it all the way down, she whispered. My breath left me. Sophie, I'm sorry. I know I wasn't supposed to hide, but Mom told me to wait in the car and I came in because I wanted to see you. I crossed the room and knelt as best I could, my knees protesting. She handed me the envelope. The edge was bent, but the invitation inside was safe. I read a little, she admitted, eyes wide. Grandma, were you really a general? I looked at that child, at her trembling mouth and fierce little hands. Yes, I said softly. I was. How many people did you lead? I hesitated. Tens of thousands over time. Her eyes filled with wonder. Then why does Mom talk to you like that? There are questions that expose entire families. I cupped her face in my hands. Because sometimes people only respect power when it is loud, but real power does not always announce itself. Sophie looked down at the invitation. Are you going to the gala? For the first time, I answered without doubt. Yes, I said. I believe I am. Outside, the late afternoon sun broke through the clouds. Inside, my granddaughter smiled as if she had been trusted with a secret treasure. And in a way she had. Sophie held that invitation like it was made of glass. Her small fingers were pressed carefully against the cream envelope, avoiding the bent corner where Lauren had nearly ruined it. The sunlight from my kitchen window fell across her face, catching the tears still shining along her lower lashes. Grandma, she whispered, why didn't you tell us? I sat down slowly at the kitchen table, not because I wanted distance from her, but because the truth suddenly felt heavier than my body. Sophie climbed into the chair across from me and placed the envelope between us. I never hid it because I was ashamed, I said. I kept it quiet because I didn't want my rank to become the loudest thing about me, but being a general is important. It was important work, I corrected gently. But it was still work. A title is not a heart. A uniform is not a soul. When people love you, Sophie, they should not need decorations on your chest to treat you with kindness. She looked down at the envelope. Mom threw it away. Yes. Did that hurt? Children have a way of asking the question adults spend years avoiding. I looked toward the hallway wall where James's photograph rested in a simple wooden frame. In it, he stood beside me at a formal event. Years ago, his hand at the small of my back, my dress uniform pressed so sharply it looked carved from discipline. He had always stood close enough that I could feel his support without needing to look for it. Yes, I said. It hurt? Sophie's chin trembled. I'm sorry. Oh, sweetheart, you didn't do it. But I didn't stop her. You saved what she threw away. Sometimes that is how courage begins. She wiped her cheek with the back of her hand. Does Dad know? He knows I served. He knows I held command positions. But I don't think he ever understood all of it. Why? I smiled sadly. Because children grow up inside their parents' lives without always seeing the size of them. To Ethan, I was just mom. I packed lunches. I checked homework. I drove him to soccer practice. I told him to brush his teeth. He didn't sit in the rooms where people called me General Turner. Sophie's eyes widened at the name. General Turner, she repeated as if trying it on. I laughed softly. You don't have to call me that. I know. But Mom should. No, I said. Your mother should call me Madison with respect. That would be enough. Sophie slid the invitation back toward me. Are you mad at her? I thought about Lauren's hand dropping the envelope into the trash. Her careless little smile. Her words, one less thing for you to worry about. I am disappointed, I said. That sounds worse. It often is. Sophie leaned closer. Are you going to tell Dad? Not yet. Why not? Because some truths must arrive at the right moment, or people only argue with them. She frowned, trying to understand. I placed the invitation back inside the envelope and smoothed its edge with my palm. Promise me something? What? Do not use this secret as a weapon against your mother. But she's wrong. Yes, and one day she will have to face that. But I don't want your heart learning cruelty from her mistake. Sophie sat very still. Then she nodded. I promise. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. That is leadership. She smiled faintly. Even if I'm not a general. Especially then. That afternoon, after Sophie left, I carried the invitation to my study. The room smelled faintly of cedar leather and old paper. James used to call it my war room, though I had never allowed military maps or displays to take over the walls. Instead, there were books, family photographs, and one locked cabinet where I kept the pieces of my service I rarely showed anyone. I opened the cabinet and placed the invitation inside, beside a folded American flag from my final command ceremony. Then I stood there longer than I meant to. Memories do not always come as pictures. Sometimes they come as sounds. Boots on concrete. helicopter blades turning above a field hospital. A young captain saying, "Ma'am, we need a decision." James whispering through a phone line, "I'm proud of you, Maddie. Come home safe." And Ethan, age 7, asking, "Do generals still make pancakes?" I had laughed and told him the best generals did. That evening, Ethan called. "Mom, did Lauren stop by?" "Yes. She said she dropped off Sophie's permission slip." "She did." A pause. "Was everything okay?" I looked at the locked cabinet. "Ethan, do you really want the answer?" He exhaled slowly. "Mom?" That's what I thought. "I'm trying." "No," I said quietly. "You are wishing things would become easier without requiring anything from you. That is not the same as trying." Silence. I could picture him standing in his home office, rubbing his forehead, caught between guilt and fear of upsetting his wife. "I don't know how we got here," he said, one small silence at a time. His breathing caught. "I love you. I love you too. I'll talk to Lauren." "Will you?" He did not answer fast enough, so I said, "Good night, Ethan." After we hung up, I sat in my study until the house grew dark around me. The next morning, Sophie came over before school. Ethan dropped her off because Lauren had an early appointment. Sophie carried a backpack nearly as large as her torso and walked straight to my kitchen table. I made something she said. She pulled out a folded sheet of notebook paper. At the top, she had written, "Things Grandma taught me." Underneath were 5 lines. "Be kind when nobody is watching. Don't confuse quiet with weak. Real power doesn't always announce itself. A house can be full of love. Never throw away something before you know what it means." I had to look away before she saw my eyes fill. "This is beautiful," I said. "I'm going to keep adding to it." "You do that." As I packed her a small breakfast, she wandered toward the hallway and stopped before the framed photo of James and me. It was the same formal portrait I had looked at the day before. "Grandma," she called, "is this your uniform?" "Yes. You look different." "How so?" She tilted her head. "Not different like not you. Different like everyone had to listen." I laughed, but softly. Sometimes they did. "Were you scared I joined her in the hallway?" "Many times." "But you still did things." "That is what courage is." She turned to me with serious eyes. "I think Dad is scared." "So do I." "Can grown-ups learn courage late?" I touched her shoulder. "If they are honest enough." She nodded, storing that away. After Ethan picked her up, I spent the rest of the day at the Veterans Center. I helped Mr. Alvarez file an appeal, sat with a young mother whose husband had come home injured, and made 3 phone calls to offices where people suddenly became more helpful after hearing my name. By the time I returned home, there was a message on my answering machine. "General Turner. This is Colonel Rachel Bennett. I'll be traveling with General Carter for the gala. Ma'am, it will be an honor to see you again." Rachel Bennett. The name pulled me back 20 years. She had been sharp disciplined, stubborn in all the best ways, a colonel who never wasted words and never abandoned people. I had once written in her evaluation that she possessed the rare courage to disagree with respect and execute with excellence. Hearing her voice again made the gala feel real. Not a rumor. Not a hidden envelope. Real. I replayed the message twice. Then I opened the desk drawer and took out a clean sheet of paper. For nearly an hour, I wrote names. Some were living, some were gone. Soldiers, officers, interpreters, nurses, drivers, mechanics, chaplains, families. People who had made my career possible. People whose courage had been folded into mine until outsiders could no longer tell where one ended and the other began. If I accepted that award, I would not accept it alone. I would carry all of them with me. Near dusk, Sophie called again. "Grandma," she whispered, "Mom is talking about the gala dress again." "That sounds like your mother. She said you probably wouldn't understand how formal it is." I see. I wanted to say something, but I remembered my promise. That was wise. But it was hard. Most promises worth keeping are. She lowered her voice even more. I still think she's going to be surprised. I looked toward the locked cabinet. Yes, sweetheart, I said. I believe she will. Lauren's obsession with the gala took over the entire household. For 2 weeks, every conversation seemed to bend towards it. If Ethan mentioned work, Lauren redirected him to which business leaders might attend. If Sophie talked about school, Lauren reminded her to practice standing straight in her new dress. If I asked whether they wanted Sunday dinner at my house, Lauren said they were too swamped with gala preparation, as if hosting a few guests required the same planning as a military evacuation. I watched it all quietly. There was something almost sad about it. Lauren believed this one night could lift her into a new circle of importance. She imagined herself shaking hands with politicians, laughing with donors, being photographed near officers whose ranks she did not understand, but admired because other people admired them. She wanted proximity to honor without having to understand sacrifice. On the Wednesday before the gala, she came to my house with garment bags hanging from one arm and a box of shoes balanced under the other. I need your dining room table, she announced. Good afternoon to you too, I said. She paused, forced a smile. Good afternoon, Madison. I stepped aside and let her in, mostly because Sophie was with her and gave me a pleading look from behind the garment bags. Lauren spread everything across my dining room table without asking. Emerald silk black satin, Sophie's pale blue dress, Ethan's tuxedo shirt, still pinned into cardboard. She moved around the room, making little distressed noises. The tailor nearly ruined the hem, she said, and Ethan forgot to pick up his cufflinks. And Sophie keeps saying she wants to wear that little bracelet you gave her. Sophie, sitting near the window, looked down at her hands. It's pretty, she mumbled. It's not formal enough, Lauren said. It was from Grandma. That does not make it appropriate. I folded my hands in my lap. Lauren, the bracelet is simple silver. It won't harm anyone. She glanced at me. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You don't understand these environments. There it was again. You don't understand. I almost smiled. If Lauren had known how many formal military receptions I had attended, how many diplomatic dinners I had sat through, how many rooms I had entered where every glance carried politics, she might have swallowed her words whole. But she did not know. And I had not told her. Perhaps not, I said. That satisfied her. People who need to feel superior are often easy to calm. Give them the illusion of winning, and they stop looking carefully. Lauren continued adjusting fabric. By the way, I hope you didn't take it personally that we didn't include you in the gala plans. Sophie's head lifted. I looked at Lauren. Did you not? She gave a laugh. Madison. Come on, you wouldn't enjoy it. It's late, crowded, formal. Lots of standing, lots of conversation with people you don't know. I know how to stand. Lauren ignored that. And honestly, I just think it would be overwhelming. For whom? Her hand stopped smoothing the emerald gown. For you. I could feel Sophie holding her breath. I appreciate your concern, I said. But I can decide what overwhelms me. Lauren turned, her patience thinning. I'm trying to protect you from embarrassment. That word hung between us. Embarrassment, not exhaustion, not discomfort, not inconvenience. Embarrassment. You believe I would embarrass you, I said. She sighed as if I had forced honesty from her against her will. I believe you don't always understand how people perceive things. What things? Your truck, your old-fashioned clothes, the way you tell those long military stories, the way you act like none of this matters, perhaps because none of it does. That's exactly the problem, Lauren snapped. Sophie flinched. Lauren lowered her voice, but the damage was done. You think appearances don't matter because you've never had to build anything socially. Ethan and I are trying to move forward. We're trying to create opportunities for Sophie. We can't keep dragging the past into every room. The past. That was what I had become to her. Not a mother, not a grandmother, not even a person. A past she wanted hidden. I stood slowly. Lauren? I will not argue in front of Sophie. She glanced at her daughter and seemed annoyed that Sophie had ears. I'm not arguing, she said. I'm setting a boundary. No, I replied. You are issuing an insult and calling it a boundary. Her face hardened. Fine. Then, let me be clear. I do not think you should attend the gala. Sophie stood. Mom? No, Sophie. Enough. This night is important. Your father's career could benefit from it. Our family's reputation could benefit from it. I will not have everything undermined because your grandmother insists on showing up in some old coat and talking about a war story from 30 years ago. I felt something inside me go very still. Old coat, war story, 30 years ago. Lauren's ignorance was becoming almost impressive in its confidence. I understand, I said. Sophie looked at me in panic. Grandma? But I gave her a small nod. Not surrender. Patience. Lauren gathered the garment bags with sharp movements. We should go, she said. Sophie lingered as long as she could. As Lauren carried things toward the door, Sophie rushed into my arms. You're still coming, right? She whispered so softly, I barely heard it. I kissed the top of her head. Do you remember what I told you about real power? It doesn't always announce itself. That's right. She pulled back and searched my face. Then she smiled. After they left, the house settled into silence. I walked to the kitchen, rinsed the untouched teacups, and looked out at the oak tree. The late afternoon light filtered through its leaves in broken gold. My phone rang at 5:12. I knew the number before I answered. Madison Turner. General Turner William Carter said, I hope I'm not interrupting your tomato empire. Only the basil division. He chuckled. Good. We need to finalize your escort details. My escort? Did you think we were letting you drive yourself to your own recognition ceremony in that old pickup? My pickup has character. Your pickup has a muffler problem. I smiled despite myself, still observant. Always. I leaned against the counter. William, I don't need a fuss. That is unfortunate because you are getting one. Absolutely not. Madison. He used my first name, not my title. That meant he was about to stop joking. The army will be represented. The council will be represented. Several former members of your command are traveling in. Colonel Bennett insisted on being part of the arrival detail. Rachel always did enjoy making things official. She respects you. I know, No William said. I'm not sure you do. I stared at the floor. He continued. You taught an entire generation of officers that authority without humility becomes vanity. But humility without self-respect becomes erasure. Do not erase yourself for people who never bothered to read the record. The words struck too close. I turned toward the hallway where the study door stood half open. What time? I asked. 7 sharp. Black SUV. Driver and aide. Colonel Bennett will meet you at the convention center entrance. I'll be inside with the mayor. I don't want my family warned. A pause. I wondered if that was the case. I am not trying to humiliate anyone, no, he said softly. But the truth may do that without your help. I closed my eyes. That was what worried me. Truth has a way of looking cruel to people who benefited from lies. After the call, I went to the study. I unlocked the cabinet. My dress uniform hung inside a protective garment bag. I'd kept it preserved carefully, not because I expected to wear it again, but because some things deserve respect, even in storage. I unzipped the bag. The dark fabric looked almost black in the dim room. The rows of ribbons were arranged with exactness. Stars rested where rank had once rested on active shoulders. The nameplate gleamed faintly. Turner. I touched it with 2 fingers. For a moment, I was younger, stronger. Standing in front of soldiers before dawn. telling them what needed to be done and trusting them to do it, carrying fear in private so they could carry focus in public. Then I was 68 again, in a quiet house preparing to attend a gala my daughter-in-law had forbidden me from entering. Life has a sense of humor sharper than any blade. That night, Ethan came by alone. I was surprised to see him. He stood on the porch with his hands in his jacket pockets, looking like the boy who used to confess broken lamps before I discovered them. "Can I come in?" I opened the door wider. He sat at the kitchen table while I made coffee. For a while, he said nothing. Finally, he whispered, "Lauren told me what she said." "All of it." His eyes lowered. "Enough." And he rubbed both hands over his face. "I told her she went too far." That must have been difficult. He looked up, startled by the calmness in my voice. "She said I always take your side." "Do you?" Pain crossed his face. "No," he said. "I guess I don't." I placed coffee in front of him and sat. "Why, Ethan?" He swallowed. "Because when Lauren gets angry, the whole house changes. Sophie gets quiet. I get tired. It feels easier to let things pass. Easier for whom he looked ashamed. For me, there it was, not cruelty, cowardice. And sometimes cowardice harms the innocent, just as surely as cruelty does. "I failed you," he said. I did not rush to comfort him. A mother's instinct is to soften every blow for her child, but a grown son must sometimes feel the full weight of truth. "You disappointed me," I said. "That is not the same as failing forever." His eyes filled. "Are you coming to the gala?" I held his gaze. "Yes," he inhaled. Lauren said. I know what Lauren said. "Mom, it might get ugly." Then, let it be ugly honestly, instead of polite and false. He stared at me as if seeing someone he had forgotten. For a moment, I saw the 7-year-old again, the boy asking me to help him be brave. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Yes. Was there more to your career than you told me?" I looked toward the study. Yes. How much more I stood and carried his empty cup to the sink. "Enough that you should have asked sooner." He closed his eyes. I kissed his forehead before he left. Not because all was forgiven, because love and disappointment can sit in the same room. After he drove away, I laid out my uniform, polished my shoes, and set Sophie's little handwritten list beside my jewelry box, things Grandma taught me. I read the last line again. Never throw away something before you know what it means. Lauren had thrown away an invitation, but she had also thrown away patience. And on gala night, she was going to learn exactly what both had been worth. The night of the gala arrived cold and clear. By sunset, the sky over the city had turned deep blue, and the windows of downtown buildings glowed like rows of watchful eyes. From my bedroom, I could see the first star appear above James's oak tree. I stood before the mirror in my dress uniform, fastening each piece slowly, not out of vanity, but remembrance. There is a ceremony to preparing yourself for honor. The jacket settled across my shoulders with familiar weight. The fabric was older now, but carefully preserved. The rows of ribbons rested over my heart. The stars caught the lamplight. My shoes shone black enough to reflect the edge of the rug. For a moment, I hardly recognized the woman in the mirror. Then I looked into her eyes. There she was. Older, yes. Softer in some places. Slower in the knees, silver-haired, widowed, but still Madison Turner, still standing. I opened the small jewelry box on my dresser and took out James's wedding ring. After he passed, I had placed it on a thin gold chain. I wore it beneath my blouse during difficult days, close enough that I could feel it when I breathed. That night, I clasped it around my neck. "You coming with me?" I whispered. The house answered with silence, but I felt him there. At exactly 7 o'clock, headlights swept across the front windows. A black SUV pulled to the curb. Not flashy, not loud, just official. I took my coat from the chair, picked up the invitation, and walked through my house slowly. In the hallway, I paused at the photographs. Ethan missing his 2 front teeth. Sophie as a toddler asleep against my shoulder. James painting the porch. Me in uniform decades earlier, standing between officers who had believed in the mission because I had asked them to. I touched the frame once. Then I stepped outside. A young Army captain stood beside the SUV. When he saw me, he straightened immediately and saluted. General Turner, Captain Marcus Reed, ma'am. It's an honor. I returned the salute. Thank you, Captain. He opened the door for me with the kind of respect Lauren had been chasing in rooms where she thought money purchased it. As we drove toward the convention center, the city lights slid across the window. I did not speak much. Captain Reed seemed to understand. Some rides are not for conversation. They are for gathering oneself. Downtown banners for the Military Heritage Recognition Gala hung from lampposts. The convention center entrance was bright with cameras, valet attendants, guests in gowns and tuxedos and flags moving gently in the night air. Inside, Lauren was already performing. I saw her before she saw me. She stood near the reception table in her emerald gown, laughing with Mayor Collins, and 2 women wearing diamonds large enough to signal wealth across a room. Ethan stood beside her in his tuxedo, handsome and tense. Sophie, in her pale blue dress, wore the silver bracelet I had given her. That made me smile. Lauren had lost at least 1 battle already. The ballroom was grand with high ceilings, polished floors, round tables dressed in white linens, and a stage at the front where flags stood behind a podium. Soft music floated from a string quartet near the wall. Waiters moved between guests, carrying trays of sparkling water and wine. I entered quietly through the main doors. At first, only a few people noticed, then a few more. Conversations shifted, not stopped entirely but bent. A retired colonel near the entrance saw me first. His eyes widened. He set down his glass and saluted. General Turner, he said, voice thick with emotion. I nodded. Colonel. That single word carried across the entrance area more effectively than any announcement. Several heads turned. One man whispered something to his wife. Another veteran straightened in his chair. I moved forward, calm and measured. Then Lauren saw me. The smile disappeared from her face so completely, it was almost like watching a mask fall off. She excused herself from Mayor Collins with a laugh too sharp to be natural and hurried toward me, emerald gown swishing around her legs. What are you doing? She hissed. Good evening, Lauren. Her eyes traveled over my uniform, but instead of understanding, she seemed to grow angrier. Is this some kind of stunt? No. You cannot just show up dressed like that. I looked down at myself, then back at her. This is my dress uniform. I don't care what it is. You were not invited with us. I was invited. Her jaw tightened. By whom, Ethan? No. Then this is inappropriate. People nearby had begun listening. Lauren noticed, and her voice turned sweet. Madison. I know this probably feels exciting, but this is a formal event. You can't just walk in because you once served in the Army. Lauren, Ethan said, appearing behind her. Stop, she snapped toward him. No, Ethan. I told you this would happen. Sophie pushed past him, eyes shining. Grandma? I smiled at her. Hello, sweetheart. You look beautiful. Lauren grabbed Sophie lightly by the shoulder. Go stand with your father. But Mom? Now? Sophie obeyed, but her eyes never left me. Lauren turned back to me. You need to leave before this becomes humiliating. For whom? Her nostrils flared. For all of us. There it was again. Us. A word people use when they want their shame to become everyone's responsibility. I reached into my coat pocket and removed the invitation. I'm exactly where I am supposed to be. Lauren looked at the envelope and froze for half a second. Recognition flashed across her face. The trash can, the discarded mail, the things she thought she had thrown away. You kept that, she whispered. Sophie kept it. Her eyes shot toward her daughter. I regretted saying it the moment I saw Lauren's expression harden, but Sophie stepped forward before fear could take root. I picked it up because you shouldn't throw away Grandma's things. A few guests murmured. Lauren's face flushed. You had no right. No, I said, you had no right. That was when Lauren made her mistake. She turned and raised her hand toward a nearby security officer. Excuse me, she said, voice trembling with anger. This woman is causing a disturbance. She is not part of our party and I need her removed. The security officer, a broad man in a dark suit, approached with polite caution. Ma'am, he said to me, may I see your identification? Of course. I handed him my military ID and invitation. He glanced down. Then his posture changed. It was subtle, but everyone nearby saw it. His shoulders squared, his chin lifted. His expression shifted from procedure to alarmed respect. He read the card again. Then the invitation. Then my face. General Turner, he said quietly. Lauren went still. The security officer swallowed and immediately stepped back. My apologies, ma'am. No apology necessary, I said. He turned to another staff member nearby and spoke into his radio. We need event command at the main entrance. Now. Lauren laughed once, nervous and sharp. What is this? Why are you acting like she's... The security officer looked at her. Ma'am, please step aside. Lauren blinked. I beg your pardon. Please step aside. The words were polite, but they carried authority. Ethan reached for Lauren's arm. Lauren, enough. But she shook him off. No. I want to know what is happening. The ballroom had grown quieter. Mayor Collins, sensing trouble, began moving toward us. Several military guests had turned fully in our direction. Sophie stood near Ethan, both hands over her bracelet, hope and fear, battling across her face. I could feel the room waiting. For the first time all evening, Lauren looked uncertain. Not humbled, not sorry, but uncertain. That was something. The security officer kept his eyes on the entrance. I heard the sound before I saw anything. Engines outside, multiple vehicles. A low synchronized arrival that made every veteran in the room instinctively turn their heads. Through the glass doors, black SUVs pulled up to the curb one after another. Lauren followed everyone's gaze. Her face changed. The first door opened, then another. Uniformed officers stepped out beneath the bright lights of the convention center entrance. And at the center of them, moving with slow, unmistakable authority, was General William Carter. Behind him walked Colonel Rachel Bennett. The room fell into a silence so complete I could hear Lauren's breathing. Rachel saw me through the glass. She stopped. Then, with tears in her eyes and perfect military bearing, she raised her hand in salute. Every uniformed service member near the entrance followed, one by one, until the front of the ballroom stood at attention. For me. Lauren's hand slipped from Ethan's arm, and for the first time since I had known her, my daughter-in-law had absolutely nothing to say. The silence in that ballroom did not feel empty. It felt full. Full of shock. Full of recognition. Full of every careless word Lauren had ever spoken, suddenly returning to stand beside her like witnesses. General William Carter entered first, tall and silver-haired, his dress uniform immaculate. His expression calm, but carrying the old gravity that had made younger officers stand straighter before he ever said a word. Colonel Rachel Bennett walked at his right, her eyes fixed on me with a kind of fierce tenderness that almost undid me. Behind them came several senior officers, retired and active men and women whose faces carried years of service. Some I recognized immediately. Some had aged in ways that startled me. Some were once young captains and majors under my command, and now they carried stars, eagles, and histories of their own. The room parted for them. Lauren stepped back without realizing it. Ethan stood frozen. Sophie began to cry silently. General Carter stopped 3 feet in front of me. For one moment, neither of us spoke. Then he saluted. General Turner, he said, his voice carrying through the ballroom. It is an honor to stand in your presence again. I returned the salute. General Carter. His mouth softened into a smile only I could see. Still making us come find you. I was never lost. No, ma'am, Rachel Bennett said, her voice thick. You never were. She saluted next. I returned it, and when her hand lowered, she stepped forward and embraced me. It was not protocol. It was better than protocol. You look exactly the same, she whispered. That is a terrible lie, Colonel. She laughed through tears. Respectfully, ma'am, I stand by my statement. A ripple moved through the room. Not laughter exactly. Relief. Awe. Confusion settling into understanding for everyone except Lauren, who looked as though reality had betrayed her personally. Mayor Richard Collins approached with nervous energy, adjusting his tuxedo jacket. General Turner, he said, extending both hands. We are deeply honored. Deeply honored. I was told you preferred a quiet arrival. I glanced at Lauren. Apparently, that was not possible. The mayor followed my gaze just long enough to understand something had happened before his arrival. His smile tightened with political awareness. Well, he said carefully, we are grateful you are here. General Carter turned slightly and looked at the gathered guests. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, without needing a microphone for anyone in this room who has not yet had the privilege, allow me to introduce General Madison Elaine Turner, United States Army, retired. The words struck like a bell. Madison Elaine Turner, United States Army. General. Not old soldier, not burden, not embarrassment. General. A murmur swept through the ballroom. I saw hands rise to mouths. Saw guests exchange stunned looks. Saw one of Lauren's friends, the same woman who had laughed at dinner, go pale with recognition. Ethan's eyes found mine. Something in his face collapsed. Not from shame alone, from grief. The grief of realizing you have been standing beside a mountain for years and calling it a hill. Lauren whispered, "That can't be right." She did not mean for anyone to hear, but the room was too quiet. Rachel Bennett turned her head slowly toward her. "Excuse me." Lauren opened her mouth, then closed it. General Carter's expression remained civil, but I knew him well enough to see the steel underneath. "Mrs. Turner," he said. Lauren blinked. "Yes, I assume you are Ethan's wife." She straightened, clinging to the one role she understood. "Yes, Lauren Turner." Carter nodded once. "Then you are family to one of the finest commanding officers this nation has produced." Lauren's face flushed. "I didn't realize, no," he said. "It appears you did not." The sentence was quiet. It landed harder than shouting. I stepped in before humiliation became cruelty. "William," he looked at me. A whole conversation passed between us in that single word. "Do not destroy her. Not here, not yet." He inclined his head. Of course. That was command loyalty too. He would defend me fiercely, but he would obey the boundary I set. The mayor, eager to recover the evening, gestured toward the main hall. "General Turner, if you and your party would allow us, we have a reserved table at the front." Lauren looked toward the seating chart. "The front?" she whispered. Sophie suddenly pulled free from Ethan and ran to me. This time, no one stopped her. She wrapped both arms around my waist, careful of the medals, but desperate enough to forget the room. "I knew it," she whispered. I bent and kissed her forehead. "You kept my secret well." She looked up. "Are you mad?" I cried. "No. Tears are honest." Ethan approached slowly. He looked like a man walking toward a verdict. "Mom," he said, voice breaking. I held up one hand. "Not here." He nodded, tears in his eyes. "Okay." Lauren stood behind him, rigid and pale. For a moment, I saw no cruelty in her face, only confusion, and beneath it fear. Not fear of me. Fear of what this meant about her, if I was not what she had decided I was. Then, what did that make every word she had spoken? We moved toward the front of the ballroom. The walk felt longer than it was. People stood as we passed. Some saluted. Some placed hands over their hearts. Others simply watched with the reverence people reserve for a story they realized they entered too late to understand. I recognized an old master sergeant near the stage. "Sergeant Wilkes," I said. His eyes widened. "You remember me, ma'am? You once fixed a communications failure with duct tape and a prayer outside Kandahar." His laugh burst out. "Yes, ma'am. You also stole my coffee." His face reddened as nearby officers laughed. "Borrowed, ma'am. Permanently." The room relaxed. That was how soldiers heal tension. Not by denying pain, but by finding the thread of humanity running through it. At the front table, name cards were already placed. General Madison Turner, General William Carter, Colonel Rachel Bennett, Mayor Richard Collins, Ethan Turner, Lauren Turner, Sophie Turner. Lauren stared at her card as though it accused her. She sat carefully beside Ethan, suddenly smaller in her emerald gown. Sophie sat on my other side close enough that her shoulder brushed my sleeve. "Grandma," she whispered, "everyone knows you." "Not everyone. A lot of people." I smiled. "I suppose. Did you really command General Carter?" I glanced at William, who had taken his seat, and was pretending not to listen. "For a time." William leaned over. "She did more than command me. She corrected me, outranked me, outworked me, and once saved my career by telling me the truth when everyone else was too afraid." Sophie's eyes grew huge. "She did." "Oh yes," he said. "Your grandmother has a dangerous habit of being right." "I knew that too," Sophie said. I laughed. Across the table, Ethan stared at me with a look I had not seen since he was young. Wonder. Painful wonder. Lauren remained silent. The program began. Mayor Collins welcomed the guests, spoke about service sacrifice and civic gratitude. He introduced local veterans, donors, city leaders. Applause rose and fell. Plates were served, glasses clinked. But tension remained at our table like an uninvited guest. Lauren barely touched her food. At one point, one of her acquaintances approached, smiling too brightly. "Lauren, the woman said you never mentioned your mother-in-law was General Turner." Lauren's lips parted. No answer came. "I spared her. Families rarely put full biographies on dinner invitations," I said lightly. The woman laughed, grateful for the escape, and moved away. Lauren looked at me then. Really looked. It was the first time all night. Her eyes did not scan my clothes, my age, or my usefulness. They searched my face. I wondered what she saw. An old woman. A general, a victim. A mirror. Rachel Bennett rose when the mayor called her name. She walked to the podium with the confidence of someone who had spent a lifetime earning every step. Before the formal award presentation, she said, "I have been asked to share a few words about General Turner." I lowered my eyes. I did not enjoy praise. James used to say, I received compliments like incoming fire. Rachel looked out at the ballroom. "I served under General Turner during some of the most difficult years of my career. Many people speak of leadership as strategy, command presence, or rank. General Turner taught us that leadership is what remains when power is stripped of ego." The room quieted further. She knew every driver by name, every medic, every interpreter, every family member attached to a casualty report. She held senior officers accountable and treated junior soldiers as if their lives mattered because to her, they did. My throat tightened. Sophie reached under the table and took my hand. Rachel continued. "There are people alive today because General Turner made decisions no one else had the courage to make. There are officers leading today because she corrected them instead of discarding them. There are families who never met her, but owe her more than they will ever know." Lauren's face had gone completely still. Rachel's voice softened. "And there are those of us who learned from her that dignity does not need decoration. But tonight, ma'am, whether you like it or not, we intend to decorate it anyway." Laughter and applause filled the room. I shook my head slightly. Rachel smiled at me from the podium. Then, General Carter stood. The room rose, almost instinctively with him. He looked toward our table, but his words were for everyone. General Madison Turner was my commanding officer, my mentor, and on more than one occasion, the person who prevented my ambition from outrunning my judgment. More laughter. Then his expression turned solemn. I have served with many leaders. Few understood power as deeply as she did, and fewer still carried it so lightly. Tonight, we honor not simply her rank, but the humanity with which she bore it. He paused, and if anyone here came into this room unaware of who she was, I suspect that has now changed. He did not look at Lauren. He did not need to. Her eyes lowered. The applause began softly, then grew, until the ballroom was on its feet. Sophie stood first at our table, then Ethan. Then, after a long hesitation, Lauren. I remained seated for 1 second longer, overwhelmed by the weight of names, memories, losses, and love. Then I stood. Not because I needed their applause, because everyone I carried deserved to hear it. Kethuk Fan Chin. Part Mui. When I walked toward the stage, the applause followed me like a wave. I had stood before large crowds many times in my life. Soldiers in formation, officers in briefing halls, families at memorial services, foreign officials across polished tables, young cadets with nervous eyes and new uniforms. But this felt different, because my family was watching, not the version of me that made soup-clipped coupons, drove an old pickup, and remembered birthdays. They were watching the version of me the world had known long before Lauren decided I was small. And I did not know whether that made me proud or sad. General Carter met me at the podium. Rachel Bennett stood to his left, holding a dark blue presentation case. Mayor Collins waited nearby, smiling with the cautious respect of a man who understood the evening had become larger than his program. Carter leaned toward me and whispered, "You all right, no?" His mouth twitched, honest as ever. "But I'm standing. That always was your specialty." He stepped back and faced the audience. "Before we present this honor," he said, "I want to speak briefly about why General Turner's career matters, not only to military history, but to every family, every city, and every person who has ever mistaken humility for weakness." A hush settled over the ballroom. I looked out. Sophie's eyes were bright with pride. Ethan's were red. Lauren's face was unreadable, but her hands were clasped so tightly in her lap that her knuckles had turned pale. Carter began with a story I had not expected. Many years ago, during a humanitarian crisis, overseas, communications failed between a forward medical team and command headquarters. Weather had grounded aircraft. Roads were unsafe. Reports were incomplete. There were civilians trapped in a flood zone, and every option carried risk. I remembered the night immediately. Rain, maps, static on the radio, exhausted officers arguing over impossible choices. Several people advised waiting until morning, Carter continued. Waiting would have been easier. Waiting would have protected careers. Waiting would have sounded reasonable in a report. His eyes moved to me. General Turner did not wait. In my mind, I saw the young medic's face on the radio screen, water rising behind him, his voice breaking as he tried to remain professional. "Ma'am, there are children here." That sentence had ended the debate. "We moved before dawn," Carter said. Not recklessly, not emotionally, carefully with precision. Because General Turner understood something that cannot be taught in manuals. Sometimes caution becomes cowardice when lives are on the line. The room remained silent. I could feel Ethan listening with his whole body. Carter continued. That operation saved 117 civilians, including 42 children. It also changed how future disaster response coordination was handled in that region. He paused. And when the commendations came, General Turner placed the names of her drivers, medics, engineers, and junior officers above her own. I looked down. I had not done it for praise. Those soldiers had been the mission's hands and feet, My decision meant nothing without their courage. Rachel opened the blue case. Inside lay the Military Lifetime Leadership Award, its surface catching the stage lights. But before presenting it, Carter turned another page. Her career did not stop there. General Turner later oversaw multinational stabilization efforts, led internal reform initiatives, mentored hundreds of officers, and became one of the most respected voices on ethical command decision-making in the modern Army. Ethical command. That phrase sounded clean from a podium. It had not felt clean while living it. Ethical command meant telling powerful people no. It meant writing reports that made rooms uncomfortable. It meant removing officers who were popular but careless. It meant choosing truth when silence would have made promotion easier. It meant coming home to a little boy asleep on the sofa because he tried to wait up for me and failed. It meant James reheating dinner without complaint, though I could see the loneliness in his shoulders. I turned slightly and saw Ethan wiping his face. My son had not known all of it. Maybe I had made that mistake. I had wanted to protect him from the weight of my service. I had wanted him to have a mother, not a monument. So I gave him pancakes, birthday cakes, spelling tests, bedtime stories, and hugs in airport terminals. But somewhere along the way, by hiding the cost, I had hidden the courage too. Carter's voice softened. Those who served under General Turner knew her as demanding, exacting, and impossible to fool. A small wave of laughter moved through the military guests. She was also the officer most likely to sit beside a grieving spouse until the room no longer felt empty. The commander most likely to remember a private's hometown. The leader most likely to ask not only whether the mission succeeded, but what it cost the people who carried it. Rachel's eyes glistened. I thought of names again. So many names. Carter lifted the award. General Madison Elaine Turner, on behalf of the retired General Officers Council, our colleagues across the service, and the many lives shaped by your leadership, we are honored to present you with the Military Lifetime Leadership Award. The applause rose again as he placed the award in my hands. It was heavier than I expected, or perhaps my hands were remembering too much. I stepped to the microphone. The ballroom quieted. For a few seconds I said nothing. I could have given the polished speech, the graceful one, the one about gratitude and service with just enough humor to make everyone comfortable. Instead, I looked at Sophie, then Ethan, then Lauren, and I told the truth. Thank you, I began. I accept this honor with deep gratitude, but not alone. No leader serves alone. No general commands alone. Any recognition given to one person is built on the labor, courage, sacrifice, and prayers of many. I looked down at the award. My husband James used to say rank is borrowed, but character is what you keep. I have lived long enough to know he was right. My voice almost broke on his name. I steadied it. I have been saluted by people who outranked me in courage. I have signed orders that kept me awake at night. I have watched young soldiers become leaders, and I have watched families carry burdens no ceremony can repay. The room was utterly still, so if there is any lesson I would offer tonight, it is this: never judge the size of a person's life by the simplicity of their home, the age of their hands, the quietness of their voice, or the modesty of their clothes. Ethan lowered his head. Lauren closed her eyes. Some of the strongest people you will ever meet are not trying to impress you. They are simply trying to live with dignity after surviving what others never saw. I breathed slowly. And to my family. Sophie sat straighter. Ethan looked up. Lauren opened her eyes. I have not always told every story. Perhaps I should have shared more. Perhaps silence, even when born from humility, can sometimes leave room for misunderstanding. I let the words settle. But dignity should not require a resume. Kindness should not depend on status. Respect should not wait until a room full of important people gives permission. Lauren's face crumpled for one brief second before she controlled it. I did not say her name. I did not need to. I finished quietly. Tonight, I remember my husband. I remember every soldier officer, civilian, and family member who shaped my life. And I remember that the highest form of service is not power, it is responsibility. Thank you. For a moment there was silence. Then the room rose. This time the applause did not feel like noise. It felt like witness. When I returned to the table, Sophie threw her arms around me. "I'm so proud of you," she sobbed. I held her close. "I'm proud of you too." Ethan stood next. He looked broken open. "Mom," he whispered, "I didn't know." "I know, I should have." "Yes." He flinched, but nodded. "I'm sorry. This is not the place for the whole conversation." "I know, but we will have it." He swallowed. "I want to." Across the table, Lauren remained seated. Her face had lost all its polished confidence. She looked younger somehow, not innocent, but exposed. The emerald gown, the diamonds, the styled hair, none of it could protect her from what she had just heard. For once, she did not speak first. That alone felt like history. Dinner resumed, though the evening had changed beyond repair. People approached me, one after another. Veterans thanked me. Officers shared memories. A woman whose father had served under my command told me he still kept a letter I had written to him after an injury ended his career. He said it saved him, she told me. I had no memory of the letter. That humbled me more than the award. You never know which small kindness someone will carry for the rest of their life. Later, as dessert was served, Ethan leaned toward me. "Mom, why didn't you tell me about the flood operation, about all of this?" I looked at my son. "Because when I came home, you needed help with homework. You needed dinner. You needed a mother who listened to your stories, not one who filled the house with hers." His voice cracked. "I would have listened." "You were a child. I'm not now." "No," I said, "you're not." The words carried more meaning than he wanted, and he knew it. Lauren suddenly stood. "I need some air." Ethan looked up. "Lauren?" "No. I just need a minute." She walked quickly toward the side exit, her gown trailing behind her like a flag after defeat. Ethan started to follow, but I touched his wrist. "Let her go. She's upset." "Yes, I should check on her." "Ethan," I said gently, "your habit has always been to rush toward Lauren's discomfort and away from mine." His face went still. I released his wrist. "Choose carefully this time." He sat back down. It cost him. I could see that, but he stayed. Outside the tall windows, Lauren stood alone on the terrace beneath the cold night sky. Her arms were wrapped around herself. For the first time since I had known her, she looked not elegant, not superior, not untouchable. She looked lost. And perhaps that was where truth had to begin. Lauren returned from the terrace after nearly 15 minutes. When she came back into the ballroom, the emerald gown still looked perfect. Her hair was still smooth and her diamonds still caught the light with every movement. But her face had changed. Not softened exactly, not healed, just cracked enough for something real to show through. She sat beside Ethan without speaking. For once, Ethan did not rush to fix the silence. I noticed that. Small changes can be the beginning of large ones. The ceremony continued with music photographs and more speeches from city officials. Mayor Collins thanked sponsors. A local choir sang "America the Beautiful." Veterans from different wars were invited to stand, and some rose easily. Some leaned on canes. One man in the corner needed his grandson's help, and when he stood, the entire room applauded as if he had climbed a mountain. I watched him wipe his eyes with shaking fingers. That was what honor should do. It should lift people who had carried heavy things quietly. After the formal program, Colonel Rachel Bennett returned to our table. Sophie looked at her as though she had stepped out of a history book. "Are you really a colonel?" Sophie asked. Rachel smiled. "I am." "Did Grandma boss you around?" Rachel laughed. "Every day." I gave her a look. "Colonel." Respectfully, ma'am, she asked. Sophie giggled. Rachel pulled out the chair beside me. May I always? She sat down, but her eyes moved briefly to Lauren before returning to me. She had seen enough of the evening to understand the shape of things. Soldiers become skilled at reading rooms. Families, too, have battlefields. General Turner Rachel said there are at least 20 people here waiting to speak to you. I suspected you would manage my schedule whether I asked or not. Old habit. Dangerous habit. Learned from the best. She reached into a folder and removed a small stack of printed photographs. She placed the first one on the table. It showed me years earlier standing beneath a canvas shelter in a muddy field beside a group of young officers. Rachel was in the photo too much younger, her face serious and exhausted. Sophie leaned in. Grandma, is that you? Yes, you look fierce. I was tired. Rachel shook her head. She was fierce. The next photograph showed a line of military vehicles moving through floodwater. Another showed medics carrying children wrapped in blankets. Another showed me kneeling beside an elderly woman while an interpreter stood nearby. I had not seen those photographs in years. The room around me blurred for a moment. Rachel noticed and gently stacked them again. I'm sorry, she said quietly. I thought Sophie might want to see. She should, I said. It's just been a long time. Lauren was watching from across the table, not with contempt this time, with something closer to uncertainty. Rachel turned toward Sophie. Your grandmother never liked having her picture taken? We had to catch her in the act of doing something. What was she doing there? Sophie asked, pointing to the photo with the elderly woman. Listening, Rachel said, that woman had lost her family in the flood. Everyone around us was rushing. Your grandmother stopped because she said the mission was not only to move bodies to safety, but to remember they had souls. Sophie looked at me with wide, wet eyes. Grandma. I squeezed her hand. Lauren's chair shifted. She looked down at her untouched dessert. A few minutes later, people began approaching. A retired major told Sophie that I had once written a recommendation that changed his life. A former medic said I had called his wife personally when he was injured. A woman from the Veterans Center told Ethan that I had helped her father receive benefits after years of denial. Each story was small. Together, they became a flood. Ethan listened to every word with visible pain. Not because the stories were painful, but because each one revealed how little space he had made for knowing me as a full person. At one point, he leaned toward me and whispered, How did I miss all of this? I answered honestly. You stopped asking. He closed his eyes. Lauren heard it. I know she did. The last speaker of the evening was Colonel Bennett. She had already offered a tribute earlier, but this time she stood without notes. The mayor handed her the microphone, and she smiled nervously at me. This is not on the program, she said. I muttered. That is usually how trouble begins. People nearby laughed. Rachel looked directly at me. General Turner once told me that command is not about being obeyed. It is about being trusted when people are afraid. I did not fully understand that when I was young. I thought leadership meant certainty. I thought it meant walking into every room already knowing the answer. She paused. Then I watched her lead through grief, doubt, exhaustion, and impossible choices. I watched her apologize when she was wrong. I watched her change course when new information demanded it. I watched her protect people who could do nothing for her career. Her voice grew softer. And when my own career nearly ended because I made a mistake I was too proud to admit, she did not destroy me. She corrected me. She held me accountable. Then she gave me the chance to become better. Rachel looked toward Lauren. Then, not cruelly, but with meaning. That is what strong people do. They do not humiliate the weak. They build strength where weakness once stood. Lauren's lips trembled. I felt no satisfaction in that, only sadness. Humiliation had brought us here. I did not want more humiliation to be the thing that finished us. The room stood again when Rachel finished. I reached for her hand when she returned, and for a moment, we were not general and colonel. We were two women who had survived long enough to understand the cost of grace. After the applause faded, Lauren suddenly stood. Every eye at our table turned toward her. "I need to say something," she said. Her voice was quiet, but the people closest to us heard. Ethan looked startled. "Lauren?" She ignored him and looked at me. I didn't know. The words were small, too small for the damage done. But they were the first true words she had offered all night. I nodded once. "No, you didn't." She swallowed. "Ethan never told me." The moment she said it, I saw Ethan flinch, and I saw Lauren realize what she had done. She had reached for blame before remorse. Old habits do not die in one evening. General Carter, seated beside me, went very still. Sophie looked disappointed. Lauren's face tightened, and defensiveness rushed back like armor. "I mean," she said quickly, "how was I supposed to know all this?" Everyone acted like it was some secret. She never said anything. Ethan never explained. I was made to look foolish tonight. The table fell silent. There it was. Not apology, embarrassment. Still herself at the center. Ethan stared at his wife, and something in him finally changed. "No," he said. Lauren turned toward him. "What? No." Ethan repeated, firmer this time. "You weren't made to look foolish. You looked foolish because of how you treated my mother." Her face went white. "Ethan? No. I should have said it years ago." My breath caught. Sophie froze. Lauren whispered, "Not here, that's what I always tell myself," he said. "Not here, not now, not in front of guests, not in front of Sophie. Not when you're upset, not when it might cause a fight." His voice shook, but he continued. And every time I said, "Not here," Mom stood alone. Tears gathered in his eyes. "I let you make her smaller in our home because I was afraid of conflict. I let you talk about her house like it was ours. I let you make Sophie think kindness had less value than money. That is on me too." Lauren looked as if he had struck her, but he had not. He had simply stopped hiding. "I am your wife," she said. "And she is my mother," Ethan replied. Both should have mattered. The words echoed the sentence I had spoken to him days earlier. For the first time that night, I felt proud of my son. Not because he chose me over his wife, because he chose truth over comfort. Lauren grabbed her clutch. "I can't do this." She stood quickly and walked away from the table again, but this time Ethan did not follow. Sophie reached for his hand. He took it. Across the table, General Carter leaned slightly toward me. "That boy found his spine." I gave him a warning look. He lifted his water glass. Respectfully. I almost smiled, but my eyes were on Lauren, standing near the exit, alone under the grand lights, surrounded by all the elegance she had wanted, and looking more lost than ever. Recognition can honor one person, but it can expose another. And Lauren had not yet decided whether exposure would make her honest or only angry. The drive home from the gala was quiet. Ethan insisted on taking Sophie and Lauren in their car. I returned in the official SUV with Captain Reed. Though my mind was not on the road, the city lights, or the award resting carefully beside me, it was on my family. Honor can fill a room, but it cannot fix a house by itself. When I reached home, Captain Reed walked me to the porch. "General Turner," he said, "tonight was an honor." "Thank you, Captain." He hesitated. "My mother watched your speech online. The city live-streamed it. That surprised me." She called me after he continued. She said, "That woman sounds like someone who knows what things cost." I smiled faintly. "Your mother sounds wise." "She is." "Call her when you get home." "Yes, ma'am." After he left, I carried the award inside and placed it on the kitchen table. Not in the study, not locked away. On the kitchen table. For one night, I let it sit in the open at it. Then I took off my uniform, folded it with care, and changed into a soft robe. I was making tea when headlights swept across the front windows. Ethan's car. I expected him alone. Instead, all three of them came to the door. Ethan looked exhausted. Sophie's eyes were swollen from crying. Lauren stood slightly behind them, with her arms folded tightly, her face stripped of gala polish. Mom, Ethan said, "Can we come in?" I opened the door. No one spoke at first. That house had held many silences before. This one was different. It was not the silence of avoidance. It was the silence before truth. Sophie walked straight to the kitchen table and touched the award with one finger. "It's real," she whispered. "Yes," I said. "It is." Lauren flinched at that, though I had not meant it as a weapon. Ethan stood near James's old chair. "I don't want to wait," he said. "If we go home, we'll just pretend tomorrow." "I can't do that anymore." Lauren's head snapped toward him. "Pretend," she said. He turned to her. "Yes." Her laugh was sharp and empty. "That's rich coming from you." He nodded slowly. "You're right." She seemed thrown by his agreement. "I have pretended," he said. "I pretended your comments weren't cruel. I pretended Mom wasn't hurt. I pretended Sophie didn't notice. I pretended your spending was under control. I pretended because I didn't want our life to crack open." My eyes moved to Lauren. Her face changed. There was the word that struck her. Spending. "Ethan," she warned. "No," he said, "not anymore." Sophie looked between them. "What spending?" Lauren closed her eyes. This is not a conversation for a child. It became Sophie's conversation and when you taught her to measure people by appearances, Ethan said. His voice was not loud, but it held. Lauren sank into a chair. For several seconds, she said nothing. Then she whispered, "I was trying to keep us from falling behind." "Behind whom?" Ethan asked. She looked at him as if the answer should have been obvious. "Everyone." The word came out broken. And there, finally beneath the cruelty, I saw the fear. Lauren had not been chasing status because she was happy. She had been running from shame. Ethan sat across from her. "How much debt?" She looked away. "Lauren." Her hands began to tremble. "Credit cards, store accounts, a personal loan?" "How much?" She pressed her lips together. "Almost 80,000. The room went still. Sophie whispered dollars. Lauren covered her face. Ethan stood so quickly, the chair scraped the floor. 80,000. I was going to fix it. How I thought if we refinanced, or if your mother sold the house, or if... She stopped. Because she heard herself. My house. There it was, finally spoken plainly. Not concern, not practicality, not family planning. A solution to a problem I had not created. Ethan looked physically sick. "You wanted Mom's house to cover your debt." Lauren's face twisted. "I wanted to keep our family stable." "No," he said. "You wanted to keep the image stable." She burst into tears, then real tears, angry and ashamed. "You don't understand what it feels like," she said. "To always feel like people are watching. To feel like if you don't look successful, everyone knows you failed." My mother lived like that. She judged everything. Clothes houses, cars, schools. I swore I would never be looked down on. Her eyes moved to me, full of something raw, and then you came along, acting like none of it mattered. Driving that truck, wearing old jackets, living in that house like you were proud of not caring. It made me crazy. I stayed quiet. She wiped her face harshly. Because if you were right, then I had wasted my whole life trying to be seen. That was the first honest thing she had said about herself. Ethan's anger faltered, replaced by pain. "Lauren, why didn't you tell me?" "Because you already thought I was too much. I thought you were stressed. You thought I was shallow." He did not deny it. She laughed through tears. "See, being shallow is not the same as being beyond help," I said. Both of them looked at me. I had spoken softly, but the words shifted the room. Lauren's mouth trembled. "You must hate me." "No." "After everything I said?" "Yes." "You don't hate me, no?" She looked almost disappointed, as if hatred would have been easier to understand than restraint. I am angry, I said. I am hurt. I am disappointed. But hatred requires a kind of energy I stopped wasting years ago. Sophie moved beside me and leaned against my arm. Lauren looked at her daughter and broke again. I'm sorry, she whispered. Sophie's voice was small. You made Grandma feel bad. I know, you made Dad scared. Lauren cried harder. I know. And you made me feel like being kind was embarrassing. That was the sentence that destroyed the last of Lauren's defenses. She covered her mouth with both hands and sobbed. Ethan reached toward her, then stopped and looked at me, not for permission, for understanding. I nodded once. He moved beside his wife, but he did not rescue her from accountability. He simply sat near her. Sophie took a deep breath, the kind children take when they decide to be braver than the adults. Grandma doesn't care if people clap, she said. She cares if people are loved. No one spoke. Sophie continued. And I think maybe Mom wanted people to clap because she didn't feel loved, unless they did. Lauren looked at her daughter as if those words had opened a locked room inside her. Oh, Sophie, she whispered. Sophie wiped her own tears. But clapping isn't the same. No, Lauren said. It isn't. Ethan leaned forward, elbows on knees, face in his hands. We need help, he said. Financial help. Marriage counseling. All of it. Lauren nodded weakly. Yes, and Mom's house is never part of the conversation again. Lauren looked at me. This time when she spoke, there was no polish. I'm sorry, she said. Not because you're a general. Not because people saw. I'm sorry because I treated you like your life had no value unless it could benefit mine. I looked at her for a long moment. That is closer to an apology. She nodded, accepting the correction. I don't deserve forgiveness tonight. No, I said. You don't. She lowered her eyes. But that does not mean forgiveness will never come. Sophie breathed out like she had been holding the whole house together with her lungs. The clock ticked quietly. James's chair sat empty near the window, and for one moment, I imagined him there watching us with that steady teacher's gaze. He had always believed people could learn, but only when they stopped defending ignorance. That night, Lauren stopped defending hers. It was not healing yet, but it was the first honest wound, and honest wounds, unlike hidden ones, can finally begin to close. Lauren came to my house alone 3 days later. It was a gray morning, the kind where the sky looked tired and the whole neighborhood seemed to move more slowly. I was in the garden pulling weeds from around the basil when her car stopped at the curb. For a moment, she stayed inside. I could see her through the windshield, both hands on the steering wheel staring straight ahead. Then she stepped out. No designer sunglasses, no perfect smile, no dramatic entrance. Just Lauren wearing jeans, a plain sweater, and a face that looked as if sleep had not been kind to her. Madison, she said. Good morning. Can we talk? I looked at the garden bed, then at her shoes, sensible flats. She had learned something already. All right. She followed me inside. For the first time since I had known her, she did not scan the house with judgment. She stood in the living room as though waiting to be invited into a sacred place. Would you like coffee? I asked. Yes, please. She sat at the kitchen table while I poured 2 cups. Her eyes rested on the wall of family photographs. I never really looked at them, she said. No, you didn't. She accepted that without argument. After a long silence, she asked, Could you show you what your life? The parts I ignored. I held the coffee pot still. That was not what I expected. You may not like all of it. I don't think I'm supposed to. I studied her face. Shame was there, yes, but also effort. Effort matters. So I led her to the study. The room was warm with morning light. Books lined the shelves. James's old globe sat in the corner. My locked cabinet stood against the wall. Lauren stopped at the doorway. I've never been in here. I know. Did you keep me out? No. You never asked to come in. She absorbed that quietly. I unlocked the cabinet and opened the doors. Inside were the visible markers of a life she had dismissed. Medals in velvet boxes, framed citations, photographs, letters, newspaper clippings, a folded flag. My dress uniform hanging with quiet dignity. Journals stacked in chronological order. Lauren took one step closer. Her hand rose, then stopped before touching anything. "May I?" "Yes." She picked up a photograph of James and me standing outside a military chapel. He was laughing at something, and I was looking at him instead of the camera. "You loved him," she said. "Very much." He looked kind. He was. She traced the edge of the frame. "Ethan has his eyes." "Yes." She set the photograph down carefully. Then she noticed a framed letter. "What is this?" "A letter from a school in Mississippi. After Hurricane Katrina, some of our coordination efforts helped relocate families and supplies. A teacher had her students write thank you notes." Lauren read silently. Her face shifted. "They were children." "Yes." She moved to the next shelf. A photograph showed me in a field hospital. Another showed me standing beside a group of women soldiers. Another showed James and Ethan at an airport, Ethan holding a poster that read, "Welcome home, Mom." Lauren touched that one. "How old was Ethan?" 9. "You were deployed?" "Yes." "For how long?" 7 months that time," she swallowed. "I complain when Ethan works late 3 nights in a row?" I did not answer. She picked up one of my journals, then looked at me for permission. I nodded. She opened to a page marked with a faded ribbon. Her eyes moved across my handwriting. I knew the entry. "James called tonight. Ethan lost another tooth. He tried to sound brave, but James said he slept with my scarf under his pillow. Command decisions all day, mother decisions all night. I do not know how to be enough in 2 places at once." Lauren's eyes filled. I didn't know she whispered. "No." She closed the journal gently. "I thought you were just proud in a quiet way, like you looked down on the rest of us for caring about things." I almost smiled at the irony. "Lauren, I never looked down on you because you cared about appearances. I was concerned because you seemed to care about them more than people." She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I did." We stood in silence. Then she turned toward me. "My mother used to inspect me before school. Hair, shoes, backpack, everything. If something was wrong, she would say, 'People decide what you're worth before you open your mouth.'" I believed her. I still hear her. "That explains your fear," I said. "It does not excuse your cruelty." "I know. Do you?" She looked me in the eyes. "Yes, I do now." She walked toward the old leather chair near the window. "Was this James's?" "Yes. Ethan told me he fixed everything in the house himself. He tried." Lauren laughed softly through tears. "That sounds like Ethan." "It sounds like James." She sat on the edge of the chair, careful, almost reverent. "I wanted you to sell this place because I saw square footage. Equity. A way out. I never saw him here, or Ethan, or you waiting for phone calls, or Sophie drawing pictures at the table." Her voice broke. "I never saw love. I only saw what it could buy me." I sat across from her. "That is a painful thing to admit." "It should be." "Yes." She wiped her face. "I don't know how to fix what I did. You cannot fix it quickly." "I know. And you cannot fix it by crying once. I know that too. Then begin with truth." She nodded. "I called the realtor. I told her never to contact you again and apologized for involving her." "Good. I also cut up 3 credit cards." "That is a start. Ethan and I have an appointment with a financial counselor Friday." "Better. And marriage counseling next week." I leaned back. "Necessary." She almost smiled. Then her face crumpled again. "Madison!" "I am sorry for calling you a broke old soldier." The words hung in this study. There are insults that hurt because they are loud. Others hurt because they reveal how little someone tried to know you. I served as a soldier before I became a general. I said, there is no shame in being an old soldier. I know, but you meant it as shame. Yes. Why? She looked down at her hands. Because I thought if I made you small, I would feel bigger. That was the truth. Ugly, but clean. I sat with it. Then I said, Lauren, I forgave the sentence before you apologized. Her head lifted sharply. You did? Yes. Why? Because I have been called worse by enemies with more power. That doesn't make it okay. No. But it means I knew the insult said more about your wound than my worth. She cried then silently. I let her. Sometimes the kindest thing is not to stop a person's tears too quickly. After a while, she whispered, Do you think Sophie will forgive me? Sophie loves you. But love is not the same as trust. You will need to rebuild that. I'm afraid she'll remember this forever. She will. Lauren closed her eyes. But I continued. What she remembers next can still matter. She opened her eyes again. You mean I can change the ending? No, I said. You can change the lesson. That seemed to strike her deeply. We spent the next hour going through the room slowly. I showed her letters James wrote during deployments. I showed her a small wooden box Ethan made me in middle school. I showed her a photograph of Sophie asleep in James's chair as a toddler. I showed her the medal I valued most, not because of rank, but because the recommendation had been written by people under my command. Lauren listened, really listened. For once, she did not interrupt. When we returned to the kitchen, the coffee had gone cold. She stood near the table, fingers resting lightly on the back of a chair. Could I come back sometime, she asked. For what? To help. With the garden, or repairs, or just coffee. She swallowed. Not because you need me to, because I need to learn how to be in this house without wanting something from it. That answer mattered. Yes, I said. You may come back. She nodded, relief and fear crossing her face together. At the door she turned. Madison, why didn't you expose me at the gala? You could have. Everyone would have believed you. I looked past her to the oak tree in the yard. Because justice and revenge are not the same thing. She stood very still, and because Sophie was watching. Lauren looked down. Then she whispered, Thank you. I watched her walk to her car. She did not leave immediately. She sat behind the wheel and cried for a while, her shoulders shaking. I did not go out. Some battles must be fought alone. But when she finally drove away, I felt something in the house loosen. Not healed, not whole, but less burdened. James's photograph caught the light near the hallway. I could almost hear him. That's a start, Maddie. Yes, I thought. It was. Healing did not arrive like a miracle. It arrived like work. Slow, awkward, sometimes uncomfortable work. The first Sunday after Lauren visited my house, Ethan came over early with a toolbox. He stood on the porch, wearing old jeans and a nervous expression. I noticed the back step is loose, he said. It has been loose for 2 years. His face tightened. Why didn't you tell me? I wanted to see how long it would take you to notice. He looked wounded for half a second, then laughed softly. That's fair. He spent the morning repairing the step while I worked in the garden. We did not speak much at first. The sound of his hammer filled the quiet between us. Every so often, he would ask where James kept certain tools, and I would tell him. By noon, sweat darkened his shirt, and the step no longer shifted under weight. He stood back and tested it twice. Dad would have done it better, he said. Your father would have taken 3 days, lost the screwdriver twice, and declared war on one nail. Ethan laughed. Really laughed, and for a moment I saw the boy again. Then his face softened. I miss him. So do I. He sat on the repaired step. I think I avoided this house after he died. I know, because every corner reminded me of him. Yes. And then Lauren started talking about selling it, and I let her, because maybe part of me wanted not to feel guilty for staying away. That truth cost him. I sat beside him. Grief makes cowards of many people before it teaches them courage. He looked at me. Did it do that to you? Yes. That surprised him. When, after James died, I stopped answering calls from old friends for nearly a year. I told myself I needed quiet. Really, I did not want anyone to see how lonely I was. Ethan leaned forward, elbows on knees. I wish I had known. I wish you had asked. He nodded, accepting the correction. I'm asking now. So I told him, not everything. A life cannot be poured out in one afternoon. But I told him about the worst winter after James passed, about sleeping with the radio on because silence felt too large, about volunteering at the Veterans Center because other people's needs gave structure to my grief, about the first time Sophie's laughter made the house feel alive again. Ethan listened. No phone, no excuses, no quick apology to escape discomfort. Just listening. That was how rebuilding began. Lauren came later with Sophie and a casserole she admitted she had bought from a deli and transferred into her own dish. I'm trying honesty, she said. That includes casseroles, apparently. Sophie laughed. Lauren looked embarrassed, but not defensive. That was new. During dinner, she did not comment on the plates, the curtains, the old table, or the fact that my silverware did not match. She helped Sophie set the table. She asked where James had built it. She listened when Ethan told the story of carving his initials underneath when he was 13 and getting grounded for it. After dinner, Lauren cleared plates without turning it into a performance. When I tried to help, she said, "Please sit." Not because you're old, because you cooked. I raised an eyebrow. She winced. Still learning, better. She smiled faintly. Trust did not return that night, but something easier entered the room. The next few weeks became a series of small repairs. Ethan came by every Saturday. Sometimes he fixed things. Sometimes he simply sat with me on the porch. Lauren attended financial counseling and began selling items she had bought to impress people who never cared about her in the first place. She cried over some of them. Not because she loved the objects, but because each one represented a version of herself she was trying to release. Sophie watched all of it. Children do not need perfect parents. They need honest ones. One evening, Sophie came over with a school assignment. "Grandma," she said, dropping her backpack by the door, "we have to do a Veterans Day presentation." I smiled. "And I want to do mine about you." I looked at Ethan, who had driven her over. His expression was tender but cautious. "Sophie," I said, "there are many veterans with important stories." "I know, but you're my veteran." That ended the debate. For 2 weeks, we worked on her presentation together. I helped her understand the difference between glorifying war and honoring service. I told her she could mention my rank, but not make it the whole story. She asked questions about courage, sacrifice, and why people choose difficult lives. On presentation day, Ethan, Lauren, and I sat in the school auditorium with other families. Sophie walked to the front wearing a navy dress and the silver bracelet. She looked nervous. Then she saw me. I nodded once. She stood taller. "My presentation is about my grandmother, Madison Turner," she began. "She was a general in the United States Army, but she taught me that the most important title is not the highest one. It is the one people trust you with." My throat tightened. Lauren reached for a tissue. Sophie continued. "Some people think strong people are loud. My grandma taught me that strong people can be quiet. Some people think success is having expensive things. My grandma taught me that success is helping people feel brave when they are scared." Ethan wiped his eyes openly. Lauren did not hide her tears either. At the end, Sophie held up her paper titled, "Things Grandma Taught Me." She had added more lines. "A family should protect dignity. Being sorry means changing. A home is not just what it costs." The auditorium applauded. Sophie looked at us, glowing with pride. That day, Lauren hugged her daughter and whispered something I could not hear. Sophie listened, then hugged her back. Not fully healed, but healing. Around that same time, General Carter and Colonel Bennett began pressing me about donating my archives. "You cannot keep all that history locked in a study forever," William said during one phone call. "I can do whatever I like. I'm retired. You keep using retirement as an excuse for stubbornness." It has been effective. "Madison," I sighed. "I'm considering it. Consider faster." Rachel was more strategic. She visited in person with museum representatives from the National Museum of the United States Army. She brought coffee compliments and a binder thick enough to qualify as a weapon. "Low blow," I told her. "Effective leadership requires preparation," she replied. The museum wanted my journal-selected letters, photographs, recorded interviews, and materials related to humanitarian command work. They promised care, context, and preservation. At first, I resisted. Those papers were not just history. They were mine. James's handwriting, Ethan's childhood drawings tucked between deployment notes, names of people I still carried privately. But then I thought of Sophie's presentation. Stories hidden too long can leave room for lies. One Sunday dinner, I told the family, "I've decided to donate many of my military archives to the museum." Ethan looked surprised. "Are you sure?" "No." He blinked. I smiled. "But I believe it is right." Sophie's eyes widened. "Will people learn about you?" "About many people, not just me." Lauren sat quietly, then said, "Would you like help organizing them?" I looked at her. She did not shrink from the question in my eyes. "I know I haven't earned much," she said, "but I can label boxes, scan photographs, make lists." "Whatever you need." I waited. Old Madison would have said no, not from anger but from habit. I had carried things alone for so long that assistance sometimes felt like intrusion. But healing requires letting people serve too. "All right," I said. Lauren breathed out, "Thank you." So we began. Every Tuesday afternoon, Lauren came over after work. We sat in the study with archival sleeves, pencils, and boxes. At first, she was careful to the point of fear. She asked before touching every paper. She apologized too often. She cried the first time she found a letter James had written me during a deployment. Over time, she steadied. She learned names. She learned dates. She learned that a medal could represent both pride and grief. One afternoon, she found the photograph of the flood rescue operation and placed it gently into a sleeve. "Madison," she said, "I used to think your silence meant there was nothing there." I looked up. "And now?" She shook her head. "Now I think it meant there was too much to carry casually." That was the day I began to believe she might truly change. Not perfectly, not quickly, but honestly. Near the end of summer, the museum confirmed the first exhibit materials. They wanted a recorded interview with me, Rachel, and William. They also asked permission to include Sophie's school presentation as part of the family legacy section. Sophie nearly exploded with pride. "My paper. In a museum." "Only if you agree," I said. "I agree." Ethan laughed. Now Lauren cried again. She cried more easily now, but her tears no longer felt like performance. They felt like thawing. That evening, after everyone left, I sat on the porch alone. The repaired step held firm beneath my feet. The oak tree moved in the warm breeze. From inside, the house came the faint smell of lemon soap Lauren had used to clean the kitchen counters. My family was not perfect. It never had been. But for the first time in years, everyone was trying to tell the truth. And truth, even when painful, is stronger ground than any beautiful lie. By the time autumn came, Sunday dinner at my house had become a tradition again. Not the old kind where everyone smiled around tension and pretended not to hear the sharpness beneath Lauren's words. Not the kind where Ethan watched the room like a man trying to prevent glass from breaking. Not the kind where Sophie studied adult faces to decide whether love was safe that day. This was different, simpler, better. The table James built was still scratched. One chair still wobbled slightly if you leaned too far back. The curtains were still the ones Lauren once hated. My silverware still refused to match, no matter how many times someone suggested I buy a new set. But now, when Lauren looked around, she did not see embarrassment. She saw belonging. One Sunday in October, she arrived carrying a homemade pie. I knew it was homemade because the crust looked uneven and one side had collapsed slightly. She set it on the counter and said, "Before anyone asks, yes, I made it myself. No, it does not look professional. Yes, I am emotionally prepared for feedback." Sophie peered at it. "It looks kind of sad." Lauren placed a hand over her heart. "Thank you for your honesty." Ethan laughed so hard he had to turn away. I looked at the pie. Apple mostly. Mostly. There was an incident with the cinnamon. Sophie whispered, "A lot of cinnamon." We ate it anyway. It was too sweet, slightly burnt, and one of the best pies I had ever tasted because no one was pretending. After dinner, Ethan helped me clear the table while Lauren and Sophie washed dishes. From the kitchen came their voices soft and real. "I'm sorry, I used to care too much about things being perfect," Lauren said. Sophie answered, "You still care." "I know, but I'm trying to care less loudly." "That's good." I looked at Ethan. He smiled sadly. "She's doing better." "Yes. So am I?" I handed him a plate. "You tell me." He thought about that. "I speak up now. Not always smoothly. Sometimes too late. But I do." I've noticed. Last week, Lauren started criticizing herself before a work dinner. Clothes, hair, everything. I told her Sophie was listening. And she stopped. Then she apologized to Sophie before we left. "That matters." He nodded. "I spent so many years thinking peace meant keeping things quiet. Many people do. But quiet isn't peace, no." I said sometimes quiet is just fear wearing good manners. He looked at me with a small smile. "You always have one of those lines ready. I've had 68 years to prepare." After dishes, Sophie brought out a box of old photographs we had been sorting for the museum. She loved that project more than anyone. Every photograph became a mystery she wanted solved. Grandma, who is this man with the mustache? Sergeant Wilkes. Coffee thief. Who is this woman? Captain Anita Morris. Best logistics officer I ever knew. Who is this? I took the photograph from her hand. It showed me and James standing beneath the oak tree when it was newly planted. Ethan was a baby in James's arms. I wore civilian clothes, but my posture was still military straight. James was laughing at me because I had insisted the tree needed to be planted at an exact angle. That, I said softly, was the first spring in this house. Everyone grew quiet. Lauren sat beside me. "May I see?" I handed it to her. She studied the picture carefully. "You look happy." I was. "Do you regret the time you lost to service?" The question was not rude. Not this time. It was honest. I leaned back and thought about it. "I regret moments," I said. "I regret missed school plays, missed dinners. The times Ethan tried to sound brave on the phone because he thought I needed him to be. I regret every loss my soldiers carried, every name I could not save." Ethan lowered his eyes. "But I do not regret serving. A meaningful life is rarely painless." Sophie leaned against my chair. "Would you do it again?" I looked at my granddaughter, at the silver bracelet on her wrist, at the young girl who had saved an invitation from the trash and forced a family to face itself. "Yes," I said, "but I would tell more stories sooner." Ethan reached across the table and took my hand. "I would ask more questions sooner," Lauren said quietly. "I would listen sooner." That was enough. Later that evening, after dessert and coffee, we moved to the porch. The air was cool, and the oak leaves had begun turning gold at the edges. Sophie sat on the steps with a notebook writing new lines for her list. "What are you adding?" I asked. She smiled. "Families can mess up and still heal." Lauren's eyes filled. Sophie added, "But only if they tell the truth." Ethan nodded. "That one's important." I looked at my family gathered under the porch light. There had been a time not long before when Lauren wanted this house sold, emptied, converted into money, erased into convenience. Now she sat in James's old porch chair with a mug of tea, asking questions about the neighborhood, about the garden, about whether Sophie could help plant bulbs before winter. Ethan had finally stopped hiding behind apologies and begun standing inside responsibility. Sophie was learning that kindness and courage belonged together. And I was learning something too. I was learning that even generals can become too skilled at silence. For years, I thought humility meant hiding anything that might make others uncomfortable. I thought if I lived simply enough, quietly enough, gently enough, my family would love me without needing proof. But love, like leadership, requires communication, not boasting, not demanding, simply telling the truth before lies have time to settle. A week later, the museum sent a preview of the exhibit title, General Madison Turner Command Compassion and the Quiet Weight of Service. Sophie insisted it sounded very official. Ethan said James would have cried. Lauren said it was beautiful, then asked whether the word quiet made me sad. I thought about that. No, I told her. Quiet is not the enemy. Silence is. She understood the difference. The exhibit opened the following month. We traveled together as a family. William Carter and Rachel Bennett were there, of course, acting as if they had not both bullied me into the entire thing. Former soldiers came. Veterans from the center came. Sophie stood proudly beside her school presentation displayed under glass. Lauren stood near the first panel for a long time. It included a photograph of me in uniform beside a quote from my gala speech, "Respect should not wait until a room full of important people gives permission." She read it twice. Then she came to me. "I'm glad people will see this," she said. "The exhibit. All of it. But especially that sentence." I looked at her. She continued. "I needed to hear it before that night. Maybe someone else will hear it before they make the mistake I made." That was when I knew her apology had become more than regret. It had become responsibility. On the drive home, Sophie fell asleep in the back seat, her head against Lauren's shoulder. Ethan drove. Lauren reached across the console and held his hand. I sat beside Sophie watching the highway lights pass across the windows. My lifetime had included commands, crises ceremonies, grief service, and honors. But that quiet ride home with my family felt like a victory no medal could hold. When we reached my house, Ethan helped me inside, though I reminded him I was not helpless. "I know," he said. "I'm not helping because you're helpless. I'm helping because I'm here." That answer made me smile. Before they left, Lauren hugged me, not the air kiss kind, a real one. "I love you, Madison," she whispered. For a moment, I closed my eyes. "I love you too." It was not the same love as before. It was more honest. That made it stronger. After their car disappeared down the street, I stood beneath the oak tree James had planted. Leaves moved overhead. The house behind me glowed warmly through the windows. Somewhere inside, the Military Lifetime Leadership Award sat on a shelf, not hidden, not displayed like a trophy, simply present. A reminder. I had once believed the greatest victories of my life happened in uniform. I was wrong. The greatest victory was not commanding thousands. It was not receiving salutes. It was not having generals arrive just in time to reveal who I had been. The greatest victory was standing in the wreckage of misunderstanding and choosing not to become bitter. It was watching my son find courage late, but not too late. It was watching my daughter-in-law learn humility through pain and truth. It was watching my granddaughter inherit not my rank, but my values: service, dignity, compassion, forgiveness. In the end, the highest rank I ever earned was not general. It was mother. It was grandmother. And those titles, unlike stars on a uniform, could never be retired. Sometimes people will judge you by the clothes you wear, the car you drive, the house you live in, or the quiet way you carry yourself. They may mistake simplicity for failure. They may mistake patience for weakness. They may even speak down to you because they cannot see the battles you survived before they entered the room. But your worth was never meant to be decided by people who only respect what shines. Madison Turner's story reminds us that dignity does not have to shout. Real strength can live in an old house, drive an old pickup, wear an old jacket, and still carry a lifetime of honor. But it also teaches another truth. Silence can protect peace for a while, but it can also leave space for lies. Sometimes the people we love need to hear our stories, not because we are boasting, but because truth helps love grow stronger. Lauren's mistake was cruel, but her healing began when she stopped defending it. Ethan's silence hurt deeply, but his healing began when he finally chose courage over comfort. Sophie's innocence became the bridge that helped a broken family find its way back. And Madison's greatest power was not revenge, it was restraint. She did not destroy Lauren when she had the chance. She allowed the truth to stand tall without turning justice into cruelty. That is a lesson many families need. Being right is powerful. Being gracious when you are right is even more powerful. If this story touched your heart, share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever been underestimated by someone who did not know your full story? Have you ever had to stay quiet until the truth finally spoke for itself? Tell us where you are watching from and what time it is there. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be heard, please like, subscribe, and stay with us for more emotional family stories about dignity, betrayal, healing, and the quiet strength of people who refuse to become bitter.